Chapter 1. The Human Mirror. Every life begins in silence, and in that silence, the first thing you encounter is not yourself, but another. Before you know language, before you know your own name, you know the eyes that look back at you, the tone that comforts you, the hands that hold you. Humanity begins in reflection. We are mirrors before we ourselves. This is the foundation of all psychology, the hidden truth of behavior and intelligence. We become who we are through the currents of others, and yet, paradoxically, we discover our true strength only when we step beyond them. The story of mankind is not simply the story of survival. It is the story of interaction. Civilization itself was born not from the solitary genius in isolation, but from the fire circle, from tribes sharing food, from hunters coordinating movements, from farmers exchanging labor. To understand human behavior, you must first understand that no action is entirely solitary. Even the hermit carries the weight of society in the memories he flees. Even the inventor, alone in his lab, builds upon the discoveries of others. Humanity is a network, a web of mirrors and exchanges, and within this web lies both our greatest strength and our greatest danger. Social intelligence, then, is not a luxury. It is not a skill reserved for politicians, salesmen, or leaders of empires. It is survival itself. The Roman general who could not read his soldiers' fear lost battles before they began. The entrepreneur who cannot feel the hunger of his customers builds products that fail before they launch. The leader who cannot hear the heartbeat of his people governs a corpse of a nation. To master social intelligence is to master leverage, because it is to master the invisible forces that move men's hearts. But here is the truth that many resist: people are not logical machines. They are oceans of emotion, currents of fear and desire, waves of insecurity and pride. To think you can move people with facts alone is to be blind. Abraham Lincoln knew this. His speeches were carved not in cold reason but in the fiery rhythm of moral conviction, painting pictures of freedom that could be felt, not just analyzed. Walt Disney knew this. He did not simply draw. He tapped into nostalgia, wonder, longing, and gave form to the emotional lives of millions. Henry Ford knew this. He did not merely build cars. He built symbols of independence, freedom on wheels, machines that touched not just pockets but hearts. Social intelligence is not manipulation. It is resonance. It is the ability to strike the invisible chord within another human being and hear it echo back. To study human behavior, then, is not to study strangers. It is to study yourself. For the same currents of fear and hope that move others move you. Why do people seek approval? Because the child in all of us still seeks the gaze of the parent. Why do people fear rejection? Because to be cast out of the tribe once meant death. Why do people chase wealth? Because wealth once meant safety, food, survival. Every modern behavior is ancient, every gesture layered with thousands of years of survival etched into the nervous system. The boardroom, the battlefield, the bedroom, all are arenas where primal instincts wear modern clothes. And yet, mastery of these instincts is what elevates you. Most are slaves to them, pulled by envy, chained by insecurity, blinded by pride. But those who step back, who observe, who study, who learn the rhythm of these forces, they rise. Carnegie rose because he understood not just steel, but people, their fears, their hungers, their ambitions. Edison triumphed not only because he experimented, but because he convinced others to believe in his light. Lincoln endured not only because he reasoned, but because he could feel the sorrow of a nation and speak to its wounds. Social intelligence was not decoration for them. It was power itself. But power comes with danger. For if you can read people, you can manipulate them. If you can influence, you can deceive. The same psychology that can heal can enslave. History is filled with tyrants who understood human behavior too well, bending crowds into mobs, feeding fear to control nations. That is why mastery of social intelligence must be tied to purpose. Without vision, without integrity, it becomes poison. With integrity, it becomes transformation. So the first law of human behavior is this: people are mirrors. They reflect, they absorb, they imitate. If you carry confidence, they mirror confidence back. If you carry fear, they absorb fear. If you radiate vision, they follow vision. Every great leader knew this. Every master of human psychology lived it. Influence does not begin with technique. It begins with state. Who you are is amplified in the reactions of others. To master them, you must first master yourself. This is where the journey begins. Not with tricks, not with manipulation, but with the recognition that every interaction is a mirror. To shape others, you must shape yourself. To awaken others, you must first awaken the voice within. Psychology is not just the study of others. It is the study of the hidden kingdom inside your own chest. And so, as the fire of history burns before us, as we walk into the labyrinth of human behavior, we begin with this understanding. Man is not isolated. Man is not machine. Man is mirror, man is emotion, man is story. To master the psychology of human behavior and the art of social intelligence is to step into that story, and not just read it, but write it. Chapter 2. The Architecture of Mindset. The first battlefield of human behavior is not found in the marketplace, not in the boardroom, not in politics, not even in relationships. It is inside the mind. Everything you will ever achieve, every influence you will ever exert, every legacy you will ever leave is first constructed within the silent chambers of your own thoughts. The architecture of mindset is the foundation upon which every act of social intelligence is built. If your mindset is fractured, your influence collapses. If your mindset is clear and unshakable, your presence becomes a fortress others feel before you even speak. History proves again and again that mindset is the first dividing line between those who drift and those who dominate. Abraham Lincoln was not born into wealth or privilege, yet his mindset was forged in resilience and vision. He taught himself law under candlelight, not because opportunity handed it to him, but because his mindset demanded it. His belief in growth, his belief in the possibility of progress, allowed him to transform rejection and defeat into preparation. Contrast him with countless men of his era who had more wealth, more opportunity, more connections, yet whose weak mindsets collapsed at the first sign of struggle. The difference was not chance. The difference was architecture. Mindset is the lens through which you interpret reality. Two people can face the same event and see two entirely different worlds. One man sees failure as the end, another as information. One woman sees rejection as humiliation, another as redirection. Thomas Edison famously said he did not fail thousands of times. He discovered thousands of ways that would not work. That is not semantics, that is mindset. His behavior, his persistence, his eventual triumph were not accidents of personality, but the direct product of how he chose to frame the world inside his mind. And here is the deeper truth. Human behavior is contagious, but it is your mindset that decides what you spread. If your mindset is fear-driven, you infect others with hesitation. If your mindset is focused, you pull others into clarity. If your mindset is grounded in belief, others feel that belief as if it were their own. Leaders throughout time have known this instinctively. Lincoln carried sorrow, but he carried resilience with it, and that resilience spread. Ford carried conviction, and that conviction spread through factories and boardrooms until an entire industry bent around it. Disney carried wonder, and that wonder spread until children and adults alike entered into his vision. The mindset of one becomes the behavior of many. But here lies the challenge. Mindset is not inherited, it is built. You do not simply wake up with the architecture of greatness. You construct it brick by brick through what you allow yourself to think, what you choose to believe, what you discipline yourself to repeat. Most people construct their mindset haphazardly, allowing fear, media, circumstance, and the opinions of others to place bricks for them. And then they wonder why their minds feel like prisons. The masters of human behavior take control of this architecture. They study, they reflect, they observe themselves. They remove rotten bricks of limiting belief and replace them with stronger ones. They design their own inner world so that it can withstand the chaos of the outer one. Mindset also determines how long you last. Talent will spark, discipline will sustain, but without the right mindset, fatigue will eventually break you. Edison's talent was not his only weapon. It was his mindset of endurance that kept him alive in the face of failure. Carnegie's empire was not built only with steel but with a mindset of expansion, of seeing abundance where others saw scarcity. Disney's masterpieces were not born only of imagination but of a mindset that turned bankruptcy into rehearsal for future glory. These men could have surrendered, and many would have justified it, but their mindset refused. Modern psychology confirms what ancient wisdom always knew: the brain itself rewires according to mindset. A growth mindset, the belief that abilities can be developed, literally alters how your brain learns, how your body responds to challenge, how your nervous system recovers from stress. The science of neuroplasticity is nothing more than modern confirmation of timeless truth. What you believe about growth shapes how you grow. Lincoln did not have a neuroscience textbook, but he knew by experience that perseverance and self-education would transform him. Edison did not know the term neuroplasticity, but he lived it in every experiment. Ford did not frame his work in psychology, but his belief in possibility-built industries. Mindset is the engine of behavior, and behavior is the blueprint of destiny. The danger is that most people let their mindset be shaped by default. They are mirrors of fear, mirrors of limitation, mirrors of the voices around them. They never stop to ask, who built the architecture of my thoughts? Was it mentors, or was it critics? Was it visionaries, or was it doubters? Was it my own deliberate design, or was it the accident of circumstance? Until you answer that question, you cannot claim ownership of your mind. And until you claim ownership of your mind, you cannot master your behavior, and you cannot influence the behavior of others. To cultivate a powerful mindset is not easy. It demands solitude, reflection, courage to confront your own illusions. It demands patience, because rewiring thought takes time. It demands resilience, because setbacks will test your frame. But once cultivated, mindset becomes armor. When others crumble, you remain. When others panic, you focus. When others scatter, you hold direction. And people feel it, they sense it, and in that sensing your social intelligence multiplies, because your very presence alters the behavior of the room. The architecture of mindset, then, is the hidden fortress of social intelligence. You cannot master the psychology of others if you are still a stranger to your own. You cannot read the fears of a crowd if you are enslaved by your own. You cannot guide others through chaos if you collapse in your own. The greats understood this. Lincoln understood it. Edison understood it. Disney understood it. They built their inner architecture so strong that the storms of the world could not break them, and because of that, they became architects of society itself. And so the first step toward mastering the psychology of human behavior is not outward, it is inward. Before you read others, you must read yourself. Before you influence others, you must influence yourself. Before you shape the world, you must shape the mind through which you see it. Mindset is not just thought. It is the soil of action, the root of resilience, the seed of destiny. Chapter 3. Belief as the engine of human action. At the core of every human choice, beneath the surface of every action, behind every word spoken and every decision taken, lies belief. Belief is the invisible architecture of behavior, the hidden engine that powers both triumph and tragedy. Belief is stronger than logic, stronger than fear, stronger even than survival itself. Men will die for their beliefs. Nations will rise and fall because of them. Every war fought, every empire built, every revolution sparked began not with weapons or armies but with belief, the conviction that something was true, possible, necessary. If mindset is the lens through which you interpret reality, then belief is the fuel that drives you into it. History is a graveyard of talents who never believed and therefore never began. It is also a cathedral of legends who dared to believe when the evidence said they should not. Abraham Lincoln believed in the possibility of unity when his nation was tearing itself apart. He had no guarantee, no evidence, no map, only belief that freedom and democracy could outlast chaos. Without that belief, he could not have carried the unbearable weight of war. Henry Ford believed in putting ordinary families into automobiles at a time when the idea was mocked, ridiculed, dismissed as fantasy. It was belief that gave him the courage to risk bankruptcy, to endure ridicule, to outlast doubt until the assembly line roared into history. Walt Disney believed in imagination so fiercely that even when every investor abandoned him, when bankruptcy chained him, when critics laughed at him, he still pressed forward, sketch after sketch, film after film, until belief itself transformed into worlds children still walk through today. Belief is not naive optimism. It is not the blind refusal to see reality. It is the decision to see beyond reality, to perceive possibility where others see dead ends. Thomas Edison believed not in failure, but in process. When he said he had not failed but discovered thousands of ways that did not work, he was not playing with words, he was describing a philosophy of belief. To him, every setback was confirmation that progress was near. That belief allowed him to work when others quit, to push when others surrendered, to endure ridicule until the night itself was conquered by light. Psychology reveals this truth again and again. Human beings act not according to objective reality, but according to their beliefs about reality. A person may be capable, but if they believe they are incapable, their behavior shrinks. A person may face danger, but if they believe they can endure, their courage expands. This is why armies collapse when belief dies, why economies thrive when belief rises, why individuals transform when they change their beliefs about themselves. Belief is the command center of behavior. It is not skill that decides your limits. It is not talent. It is belief. But belief is fragile. It can be shaped, twisted, manipulated. The same power that builds empires can enslave nations. Tyrants throughout history have understood the psychology of belief and weaponized it, planting narratives of fear, superiority, or destiny into the hearts of people until crowds became mobs and mobs became armies. This is why mastering social intelligence demands responsibility. If you can influence belief, you hold the lever that moves behavior at scale. Lincoln used belief to unify. Tyrants used belief to divide. Disney used belief to uplift. Propagandists used belief to enslave. The difference is not in the power itself but in the purpose behind it. To master your own behavior, you must master belief. And to master others, you must learn to read their beliefs, to feel the currents beneath their words, to sense the convictions that drive them. Social intelligence is not about manipulation, it is about resonance. If you can understand what someone believes about themselves, the world, and their place in it, you can connect with them, influence them, awaken them. If you can shift a single belief, you can redirect an entire life. That is the power hidden within human psychology. But belief is not static. It is built, reinforced, sometimes destroyed, and rebuilt again. Every experience lays bricks into the architecture of belief. A child encouraged builds belief in possibility. A child mocked builds belief in inadequacy. A soldier who survives battle builds belief in resilience. An entrepreneur who fails repeatedly may build belief in futility, or, if their mindset reframes it, in perseverance. This is why leaders must be careful. Every word spoken, every action taken, is planting or uprooting belief in others. Lincoln's speeches planted belief in freedom. Carnegie's philanthropy planted belief in education. Edison's persistence planted belief in possibility. Ford's factories planted belief in progress. Disney's creations planted belief in wonder. But what about the individual standing in front of the mirror, searching for belief in themselves? This is the most difficult battlefield of all. To look at your reflection and declare, "I am capable, I am worthy, I will endure." This is the war most people lose before they ever begin. They wait for external validation, for others to believe in them first, not realizing that history shows the reverse. The greats believed before anyone else did. Lincoln believed in himself long before America believed in him. Edison believed in his light long before investors believed. Disney believed in his dreams long before audiences did. Belief begins alone. It is the seed planted in solitude, watered in obscurity, and only later does it bloom in the sight of others. Belief is also paradoxical. To believe is to risk, to invest in something unseen, to commit to a path without certainty. This is why most refuse it. It feels safer to doubt. Safer to remain cynical. Safer to expect nothing. But safety builds nothing. Safety changes nothing. Safety leaves no legacy. Belief is risk, but it is also the only bridge to creation. Every invention, every revolution, every masterpiece was a risk of belief. Without it, humanity would still sit in caves, staring at fire, afraid to imagine more. Belief shapes identity. If you believe you are weak, your behavior bends toward weakness. If you believe you are resilient, your behavior rises toward resilience. Identity is not only discovered, it is built on the foundation of belief. This is why tyrants first attack identity, stripping people of belief in themselves, replacing it with belief in dependence. And this is why leaders who uplift are remembered. They return belief to those who have lost it. Lincoln returned belief to a fractured nation. Carnegie returned belief to the poor through education. Disney returned belief to the disillusioned, reminding them of wonder. Social intelligence is not the ability to manipulate words. It is the ability to breathe belief into others. Belief is the third law of human behavior because it is the invisible chain pulling action. Every movement, every revolution, every leap of invention flows from it. And for you, standing in your time, in your circumstances, belief remains the deciding factor. Do you believe in your capacity to learn, to endure, to rise, to shape? Or do you believe the voices of doubt, the chains of fear, the illusions of limitation? The difference will not simply shape your life. It will shape the lives of everyone your life touches. Chapter 4. Clarity as the compass of influence. In the chaos of human behavior, where billions of thoughts collide daily, where fear and desire battle in every mind, where society itself is a labyrinth of competing voices, clarity is the compass. Without clarity, even the strongest belief will drift into confusion. Without clarity, even the most disciplined mind will wander in circles. Without clarity, you may possess vision, but it will blur into fog. You may have energy, but it will scatter into noise. Clarity is the rarest state of the human psyche, and because of that, it is the most valuable. To master social intelligence, you must first master clarity, for without it, you cannot read others accurately, nor can you lead yourself with certainty. Clarity begins with self, because the first human being you must influence is the one within. If you cannot define what you want, how can you persuade others to follow you? If you cannot articulate who you are, how can you connect with others authentically? If you cannot understand your own motives, how can you hope to interpret the motives of those around you? This is why Lincoln could speak with such power. He was clear on his mission. His clarity was not about politics, it was about principle. His every word, his every action, was anchored in one simple compass point: preserve the Union and extend the promise of liberty. That clarity cut through the fog of war and rallied a divided nation. Thomas Edison had clarity not only about his inventions but about his purpose: to bring useful, practical progress to mankind. His clarity made him relentless in pursuing solutions, filtering thousands of possibilities until one worked. Henry Ford had clarity in his vision of affordable cars for ordinary people. He was not distracted by making luxury machines for elites. His clarity guided him through ridicule, rejection, and risk until his dream rolled across every street. Andrew Carnegie had clarity that steel was the backbone of progress, and he poured his entire will into mastering it, then later used that same clarity to dedicate his wealth to knowledge and libraries. Walt Disney had clarity about imagination, that it was not frivolous play, but the deepest source of wonder, hope, and cultural connection. That clarity made him immune to critics, because he was not confused about his purpose. Clarity in human behavior is not simply about knowing goals. It is about cutting through noise, stripping away illusions, and seeing reality as it is. Most people live in mental fog. They are unsure of what they want, unsure of who they are, unsure of why they act. Their minds are cluttered with borrowed opinions, external pressures, unconscious fears. They move, but without direction. They act, but without conviction. They are pushed by circumstance instead of pulled by clarity. And because of this, they are easily manipulated. A person without clarity will follow the loudest voice, obey the strongest influence, surrender to the most immediate desire. This is why tyrants thrive in confusion. It is also why true leaders destroy confusion with clarity. Clarity also determines communication. You cannot persuade if you cannot articulate. Lincoln's speeches were not powerful because they were long or filled with data. They were powerful because they were clear. They cut straight to principle, to truth, to moral center. Clarity makes words resonate because it removes the excess and leaves only the essential. Walt Disney's clarity allowed him to explain vast, risky ideas in ways that made others feel the dream was already alive. Edison's clarity of vision allowed him to secure backing because others could see through his words exactly what he intended. Ford's clarity allowed him to simplify industry into a system everyone could grasp. Social intelligence demands this kind of clarity, the ability to strip away fog until what remains is undeniable. Clarity is also emotional. To master behavior, you must not only know what you think but what you feel. Most people live in emotional confusion, mistaking anger for strength, fear for caution, excitement for purpose. To have clarity is to name your emotions accurately, to distinguish between impulse and intuition, between distraction and calling. Leaders who lack emotional clarity confuse their followers. Leaders who possess it transmit stability. Carnegie, Ford, Lincoln, Edison, Disney, each of them endured storms of criticism, loss, and doubt, but their emotional clarity allowed them to distinguish between temporary pain and permanent purpose. But clarity does not come easily. It must be fought for. It requires solitude in a world addicted to noise. It requires reflection in a world addicted to speed. It requires brutal honesty in a world addicted to image. You cannot purchase clarity. You cannot inherit it. You must carve it out of confusion with patience and self-examination. You must sit in silence long enough to hear your own voice beneath the crowd. You must test your values, challenge your assumptions, question your motives until the fog lifts and the compass is revealed. Clarity is also discipline. It is not enough to see once. You must return again and again to sharpen the vision. Just as glass fogs and must be wiped clean, the mind fogs and must be clarified daily. This is why great leaders return constantly to their principles, why inventors return constantly to their goals, why creators return constantly to their visions. Clarity fades unless you protect it. And once it fades, behavior falters. Social intelligence at its highest level is clarity in motion. To read another person is to cut through their words, their posture, their facade, and see the truth beneath. That requires a clear mind unclouded by projection. If you are full of your own confusion, you will misinterpret theirs. If you are ruled by your own insecurities, you will distort theirs. Only a mind trained in clarity can read others accurately. This is why the masters of influence are not those who speak the most, but those who listen the best. They listen not just with ears but with clarity, hearing what is unsaid, seeing what is hidden. Clarity is the fourth law of human behavior because it is the compass. Without it, every other power of the psyche is wasted. Belief without clarity becomes fanaticism. Discipline without clarity becomes drudgery. Courage without clarity becomes recklessness. Leadership without clarity becomes tyranny. But with clarity, every virtue strengthens. Belief is focused. Discipline is efficient. Courage is purposeful. Leadership is principled. In your own life, clarity is the difference between drifting and destiny. If you are unclear about who you are and what you want, you will waste years in confusion. If you are clear, even in the smallest degree, you will move with a force others cannot comprehend. Because clarity is rare, it is magnetic. People follow the clear. They listen to the clear. They trust the clear. And in a world of noise, those who carry clarity are like lighthouses, steady, unshaken, guiding others through storms. So ask yourself with ruthless honesty, what is my clarity? What is my principle, my compass, my unshakable point of direction? Without it, you are vulnerable. With it, you are unstoppable. Because the world bends not to those who wander, but to those who walk with clarity, carrying a compass others can feel in their presence. Chapter 5. Vision as the Map of Human Destiny. Vision is not merely the ability to see what is in front of you. It is the rare ability to see what does not yet exist, to hold in your mind a reality that has not yet taken form, to walk toward a future invisible to everyone else and treat it as though it were already solid beneath your feet. Vision is the map of destiny, the fire of creation, the blueprint of every empire, invention, and revolution. Without vision, belief wanders, discipline falters, and leadership collapses. With vision, even the smallest life can magnify into something eternal. Every great figure who shaped human behavior, every leader who commanded the tides of history, every builder who gave us the world we now inhabit, they were not guided by the present. They were guided by vision. Abraham Lincoln did not see only a fractured America. He saw the possibility of a union healed, of a nation reborn in freedom. While others drowned in division, Lincoln's vision rose above the blood and pointed toward a horizon where liberty might stand unbroken. It was that vision that gave him endurance when war stretched endlessly, when criticism devoured him, when loss nearly shattered him. Vision is what kept him steady. Thomas Edison did not see only darkness in the night. He saw cities illuminated, homes glowing, factories alive with light long after sunset. His vision extended beyond invention. It encompassed transformation. Every failed filament was measured against that vision, and because the vision burned brighter than his discouragement, he persisted until reality bent to match his imagination. Henry Ford did not see only machines and workshops. He saw families traveling together, ordinary people moving freely, roads stretching across nations. His vision was not for elites but for the common person, and because it was so clear, so compelling, he endured bankruptcies, rejection, and ridicule until wheels turned and the world accelerated into modernity. Andrew Carnegie did not see only iron and fire. He saw steel rising into towers, bridges stretching across rivers, nations advancing through industry. His vision made him relentless, but later, that same vision evolved into philanthropy, into libraries, universities, and foundations that still educate millions. Carnegie's legacy is proof that vision expands beyond personal gain and becomes a gift to generations. And Walt Disney, the boy who drew mice on scraps of paper, did not see only sketches. He saw kingdoms. He saw children and parents walking hand in hand through castles that existed only in his mind. He saw films that carried imagination across oceans. He saw the invisible as inevitable, and because of that, his vision outlived him, still pulling families into wonder decades after his voice went silent. Vision is the rarest and most magnetic form of intelligence. People are not drawn to information, they are drawn to vision. They do not follow the one who knows the most, but the one who sees the farthest. A leader with vision can command armies, inspire nations, rally communities, ignite movements. Because vision gives direction to belief. Vision gives meaning to sacrifice. Vision gives strength to discipline. Vision transforms struggle into a step forward. But vision is fragile in its beginning. At first, it lives only in one mind, one voice, one dream. It is invisible, intangible, unproven. Others will not see it. Others will mock it. Others will fear it. This is the burden of visionaries. They walk alone until the world catches up. Edison was called a fool. Ford was called reckless. Lincoln was called naive. Disney was called delusional. Every visionary carries ridicule like a shadow. And yet, those who endure, those who keep believing, keep building, keep acting, eventually see their vision crystallize into reality. Then, the same world that mocked them pretends it always believed. Vision requires courage. To see what others cannot is to be misunderstood, and to be misunderstood is to be attacked. Vision demands patience. To walk towards something invisible takes time, and time wears on the weary. Vision demands sacrifice. To pursue the unseen, you must give up the comfort of the seen. But above all, vision demands clarity of purpose. Without purpose, vision drifts into fantasy. With purpose, vision becomes prophecy. Social intelligence amplifies vision because vision is not something you hold alone, it is something you transmit. The greatest leaders in history were transmitters of vision. Lincoln transmitted unity. Edison transmitted progress. Ford transmitted possibility. Carnegie transmitted growth. Disney transmitted wonder. Their social intelligence allowed them to not just see the future, but to make others see it, feel it, believe in it. This is the essence of influence: to take what lives only in your mind and implant it in the hearts of others until they act as though it were their own. Vision is also dangerous in the wrong hands. Just as leaders of light have used vision to uplift, tyrants have used vision to enslave. The demagogue paints a vision of fear, of hatred, of exclusion, and in doing so, manipulates crowds into obedience. History has seen how destructive false visions can be when amplified by social forces. This is why vision must always be tested against integrity, against truth, against the compass of humanity. A vision that expands life is worthy. A vision that diminishes it is poison. But here is the deeper truth: everyone carries vision. The question is not whether you have it, but whether you honor it. Most bury theirs beneath doubt, ridicule, distraction, or fear. They see glimpses of what could be: a business, a book, a family, a movement, and then they silence it. They convince themselves they are not ready, not worthy, not capable. They forget that every visionary who changed history began exactly the same way, with an unseen dream and a choice: to bury it or to build it. Vision is not limited to the grand. It is not only for presidents and inventors and industrialists. A teacher who sees not just students but future leaders carries vision. A parent who sees not just children but citizens of tomorrow carries vision. An artist who sees not just canvas but culture carries vision. Vision is scaleless. What matters is not the size of the dream, but the courage to live by it. Vision is the fifth law of human behavior because it is the map. Without it, human energy scatters into survival, into trivial pursuits, into endless distraction. With it, energy converges, aligns, magnifies. With it, lives become coherent, purposeful, unstoppable. And so the question is this: what do you see that others cannot? What horizon calls to you? What image burns in your mind that the world laughs at because it cannot yet see? That is your vision. Guard it. Build it. Live it. Because in the end, history is not shaped by those who lived in the present, but by those who carried vision into the future and refused to let it die. Chapter 6: Purpose as the core of human existence. Purpose is the axis upon which the wheel of human life turns. Without it, even the most brilliant talent collapses into emptiness, even the strongest discipline decays into routine, even the greatest vision disintegrates into fantasy. Purpose is the core, the gravitational center that holds the soul together when chaos rages outside. It is the silent fire behind every act of endurance, the compass that gives direction when clarity wavers, the energy that turns sacrifice from suffering into meaning. To live without purpose is to drift through existence, to mistake survival for life, to mistake activity for destiny. To live with purpose is to become unshakable, to walk through storms with a spine of steel, to rise each day with a reason so powerful that no obstacle can permanently break you. History is filled with men and women whose purpose lifted them beyond the ordinary, and it is also filled with those who wasted potential because they never discovered it. Abraham Lincoln's purpose was not simply to govern. His purpose was to preserve the Union and extend the promise of liberty. This purpose carried him through defeats in politics, through mockery, through grief, and into the furnace of civil war. Without that purpose, the weight would have broken him. But with it he endured. Thomas Edison's purpose was not to chase patents for vanity, it was to bring practical invention to humanity, to solve problems that would elevate life. That purpose made failure tolerable, because every failure was still in service of something larger. Henry Ford's purpose was not just to sell cars, it was to revolutionize mobility, to give ordinary families freedom to travel, to compress distance and expand horizons. His purpose gave him resilience when bankers refused him and rivals laughed at him. Andrew Carnegie's purpose evolved, from building an empire of steel to dedicating his fortune to knowledge, to opening libraries where children of poverty could step into possibility. And Walt Disney's purpose, the clearest of all, was to ignite imagination, To remind the world that wonder was not childish but essential. That purpose burned through bankruptcy, betrayal, and failure until it became a force greater than himself. Purpose is the difference between work and calling, between endurance and resilience, between movement and destiny. Work without purpose is drudgery. Sacrifice without purpose is despair. Discipline without purpose is slavery. But when purpose enters, everything changes. Work becomes devotion. Sacrifice becomes sacred. Discipline becomes liberation. The same action without purpose drains you. With purpose, it fuels you. Purpose is the alchemy that turns suffering into significance. And here is the paradox of human behavior. Purpose is both deeply personal and universally necessary. Every human being, no matter how ordinary, carries the capacity for purpose. The farmer in his field, the teacher in her classroom, the doctor in his ward, the parent in her home, all have the ability to tie their daily actions to something larger, something enduring. Yet most never search for it. They live lives of quiet desperation, trapped in cycles of routine, chasing money without meaning, chasing recognition without fulfillment, chasing comfort without direction. They confuse motion with progress because they lack the anchor of purpose. This is why social intelligence and psychological mastery begin with this question: what is your purpose? Without it, you cannot lead others, because you do not know where you are leading yourself. Purpose also multiplies influence. People follow those who carry purpose because it radiates through their presence. Purpose makes you magnetic. A leader who knows why they fight can inspire armies. A teacher who knows why they teach can awaken students. An entrepreneur who knows why they build can rally teams. Purpose is felt before it is understood. It is the invisible current that others sense in your words, your actions, your demeanor. Lincoln's purpose bled through his speeches, Edison's purpose filled his laboratories, Disney's purpose infused every sketch. They did not need to shout it, it was felt. That is social intelligence at its highest form. To live so aligned with purpose that others feel it and align themselves with you. Purpose requires choice. It does not arrive by accident. It must be discovered, claimed, built. It demands reflection, honesty, courage. You must strip away the illusions of what society tells you to value, the shallow pursuit of status, wealth without meaning, applause without impact, and ask yourself, what matters when all else is stripped away? What fire will still burn when comfort is gone, when recognition is gone, when even life itself is threatened? That fire is your purpose. Without it, you will live borrowed lives, trapped in borrowed dreams, enslaved by borrowed values. With it, you become sovereign, unshakable, undeniable. Purpose is also tested. It is not enough to declare it once. Life will strike it, question it, attack it. Loss will ask you if your purpose still stands. Failure will ask you if your purpose is still worth it. Betrayal will ask you if your purpose was real or illusion. Every trial is not meant to destroy your purpose but to purify it. Lincoln's purpose was tested in war. Edison's in failure. Ford's in rejection. Carnegie's in wealth. Disney's in bankruptcy. Those who endure the test emerge with a purpose sharper than steel, unbreakable by circumstance. Purpose and psychology are inseparable. A person without purpose is easily manipulated because they have no anchor. They will believe anything, follow anyone, surrender to any influence. But a person with purpose is difficult to sway because they carry a compass inside. You cannot bribe them because meaning is worth more than money. You cannot frighten them because destiny is worth more than safety. You cannot silence them because their voice is tied to something larger than themselves. Purpose is also the foundation of legacy. What you build, what you leave, what outlasts you is born not from random activity but from aligned activity. Carnegie's libraries, Lincoln's freedom, Edison's light, Ford's mobility, Disney's imagination, all of it was purpose crystallized into reality. Without purpose, their actions would have been forgotten. With purpose, they became immortal. Purpose is the sixth law of human behavior because it is the core. Without it, nothing holds. Without it, clarity fades, belief wavers, discipline weakens, sacrifice feels pointless, vision drifts. With it, everything aligns, everything endures, everything magnifies. And so the question returns, what is your purpose? Not your job, not your task, not your temporary goal, but your reason for being. What principle will you bleed for? What dream will you die for? What truth will you live for even when the world laughs? Until you answer that, you will wander. Once you answer it, you will rise. Because purpose is not luxury. Purpose is life. Chapter 7. Discipline as the Forge of Power. Discipline is the forge where raw human potential is hammered into strength. It is the quiet, relentless force that separates dreamers from doers, vision from reality, potential from achievement. Without discipline, belief is wishful thinking, vision is fantasy, purpose is noise. With discipline, all of them become substance. Discipline is the bridge between intention and execution, the invisible line that most people will not cross because it requires one thing above all: sacrifice of comfort. And yet, history proves again and again that nothing of permanence has ever been built without it. Discipline is misunderstood in the modern world because people confuse it with restriction, with punishment, with chains that rob them of freedom. But discipline is not prison. Discipline is power. It is control. It is sovereignty over the one force that destroys more lives than poverty, than failure, than even death itself: the lack of control over self. The undisciplined man is at the mercy of every impulse, every distraction, every temptation. He drifts like a ship with no rudder, tossed by waves of desire and fear. The disciplined man, by contrast, holds the wheel. He does not avoid storms. He cuts through them with precision because his course is fixed, his hand is steady, his will is stronger than the chaos around him. Every figure who bent history carried discipline as their hidden weapon. Thomas Edison's brilliance was not only invention, it was the discipline to show up in his lab day after day, year after year, sleeping on floors, testing thousands of failures until one spark ignited the world. Henry Ford's revolution was not a single stroke of genius. It was the discipline to refine process, to endure rejection, to keep building through bankruptcies until the assembly line stood unshakable. Andrew Carnegie's empire was not mere luck. It was built on the discipline of relentless learning, of reinvesting, of expanding without pause, of sharpening every edge of his industry until steel became the backbone of a nation. Abraham Lincoln's leadership was not gifted to him. It was cultivated through years of disciplined self-education, through disciplined restraint in the face of insults, through disciplined endurance when war and grief sought to shatter him. Walt Disney's magic was not effortless. It was the discipline of drawing every day, of risking money again and again, of refining his craft and his vision until fantasy became architecture. Discipline is not glamorous. It is not exciting. It does not give applause in the moment. It is repetitive, uncelebrated, often lonely. The world celebrates results, but it ignores the hours of discipline that create them. People praise the speech, not the nights of study. They praise the invention, not the failures endured. They praise the performance, not the endless rehearsals. Discipline lives in the shadows, but it produces light for the world. Discipline is also freedom. This is the paradox few understand. Discipline does not enslave you, it liberates you. The athlete who disciplines his training is free to perform at levels others cannot. The musician who disciplines her practice is free to create music that moves generations. The leader who disciplines his emotions is free to make decisions that are just not impulsive. Discipline removes the chaos of chance and gives you mastery. Without it, you are a slave to moods, to laziness, to distraction. With it, you are free to rise above them. And here lies the psychological truth. Human behavior is driven largely by habit, by patterns repeated until they define identity. Discipline is nothing more and nothing less than the conscious design of habit. Most people allow habit to design them unconsciously, scrolling endlessly, reacting impulsively, chasing dopamine instead of direction. The disciplined person seizes this mechanism and turns it into weapon. They deliberately craft habits that serve vision, purpose, destiny. And once discipline hardens into habit, it ceases to feel like effort. It becomes identity. Edison did not wake each day debating whether to experiment. His discipline had fused into his identity. Lincoln did not debate whether to read, whether to write, whether to endure. Discipline had already decided for him. Carnegie, Ford, Disney, all of them lived by habits designed by discipline, and because of that, their lives bent upward when others collapsed. Discipline is also resistance. Every day, distractions compete for your attention. Every hour, impulses whisper in your ear. Discipline is the shield that defends vision against destruction. Without it, even the greatest vision will be devoured by noise. The modern world is more dangerous than ever in this regard. Endless notifications, infinite entertainment, constant noise, all of it designed to fracture your focus, to dissolve your will, to keep you weak. Only discipline can resist it. Only discipline can carve silence from chaos, clarity from confusion, mastery from mediocrity. But discipline is not cruelty. It is not endless denial of joy. It is alignment. True discipline does not kill life, it directs it. It says, I will sacrifice the lesser pleasure for the greater reward. I will deny the trivial to seize the eternal. I will choose pain now to build strength later. That is not cruelty, that is wisdom. The disciplined man is not joyless. He is purposeful. His pleasures are deeper because they are earned. His joys are fuller because they are not poisoned by regret. His victories are sweeter because they were paid for in sweat. Social intelligence itself requires discipline. The undisciplined mind cannot read others accurately because it projects too much of itself onto them. The undisciplined mouth cannot hold silence long enough to listen. The undisciplined leader cannot hold steady long enough to inspire trust. Influence is not possible without restraint, and restraint is the child of discipline. Lincoln's genius in leadership was as much about what he withheld as what he spoke. Edison's genius was as much about what he tested patiently as what he invented. Disney's genius was as much about the discipline of persistence as it was about imagination. Discipline is the skeleton of social intelligence, invisible, but without it, nothing stands. Discipline must also outlast emotion. Anyone can be disciplined when inspired, when excited, when the vision is fresh. True discipline is proven in boredom, in fatigue, in obscurity. It is proven when no one is watching, when the applause has faded, when progress feels invisible. Edison's nights in the lab, Lincoln's lonely years of defeat, Ford's repeated bankruptcies, Disney's humiliations, these were not moments of inspiration. These were deserts of discipline. And those who endure deserts are those who later stand on mountains. Discipline is the seventh law of human behavior because it is the forge. Without it, even genius dissolves. Without it, even vision withers. Without it, even courage collapses. But with it, the ordinary become extraordinary, the weak become strong, the invisible become immortal. And so the question is this: will you live as a slave to impulse, or as a master forged by discipline? Will you drift with the undisciplined, or will you rise with the few who endure the forge? Because in the end, history remembers not those who intended, but those who executed. Not those who dreamed, but those who built. And building requires discipline, the fire that tempers iron into steel, the force that turns human will into unbreakable destiny. Chapter 8. Action as the proof of will. Action is the dividing line between the world imagined and the world transformed. It is the bridge from thought to reality, from potential to existence. You can believe with all your heart, you can see visions as vivid as fire, you can carry purpose in your chest like a burning coal, you can discipline yourself with soldier-like rigor, but if you do not act, it dies inside you. Dreams buried without action rot into regret. Regret is nothing more than the skeleton of action never taken, the ghost of possibilities abandoned. And history does not remember intentions. It remembers deeds. Human behavior is revealed not in what people claim, not in what they feel, not in what they promise, but in what they do. This is the core truth of psychology. Behavior is the final proof of belief. A man may say he wants freedom, but if he never acts, he has chosen chains. A woman may say she desires change, but if she never moves, she has chosen stagnation. Every life, every destiny, every legacy is written not in words but in actions repeated until they shape the world. Action is difficult because it requires collision. To act is to collide with resistance, to test your vision against reality, to expose your belief to the possibility of failure. That is why so many remain in thought, in planning, in endless preparation. They tell themselves they are waiting, refining, strategizing. But in truth, they are avoiding the moment of collision. They fear failure so deeply that they choose paralysis instead, not realizing that inaction is the greatest failure of all. History does not record those who almost acted. It records those who did. Thomas Edison acted. He did not just theorize about electricity. He built, tested, failed, built again, tested again, failed again, until the night itself surrendered. Henry Ford acted. He did not just imagine cars for ordinary people. He built them, bankrupting himself, risking ridicule, until wheels rolled on roads across America. Andrew Carnegie acted. He did not merely dream of steel. He erected furnaces, expanded industries, dominated markets. Abraham Lincoln acted. He did not just mourn division. He signed proclamations, delivered speeches, commanded armies, endured a war that nearly destroyed him. Walt Disney acted. He did not just imagine castles. He drew, produced, borrowed, mortgaged, gambled everything until fantasy took shape in steel and stone. Action is the most feared and most liberating force in human life. Fear whispers, "You are not ready." Action answers, "I move anyway." Fear says, "What if you fail?" Action replies, "Then I will rise again." Fear says, "It will be too difficult." Action declares, "I will grow stronger than difficulty." Nothing silences fear more effectively than movement. Action is the cure for paralysis. Action is the antidote to doubt. Action is the great revealer, because once you move, the fog of uncertainty begins to lift. Planning may give you theories, but action gives you truth. Social intelligence itself depends on action. It is not enough to understand people, to read their emotions, to study their behavior. Influence comes through action, through words spoken, through decisions made, through presence shown. People do not follow your thoughts, they follow your actions. A leader's credibility is built not in what they claim but in what they consistently do. Lincoln's speeches carried power because they were matched by action. Edison's promises carried weight because they were matched by invention. Disney's dreams carried force because he acted until others could walk inside them. Action is what validates influence. Without it, even the greatest psychological understanding is empty. But action is costly. It demands energy, time, risk. It exposes you to criticism, to failure, to ridicule. Edison endured mockery for failed experiments. Ford was dismissed as foolish. Lincoln was called a tyrant. Disney was told he was insane. Every action is attacked because it threatens the comfort of those who do nothing. That is why most hide in inaction, because it is safe. No one mocks you for what you did not attempt. No one criticizes what you never created. But safety is the slowest poison. It kills potential quietly, leaving you alive in body but dead in spirit. Psychology teaches us that human beings crave certainty. They would rather sit in the certainty of failure than move into the uncertainty of possibility. But every breakthrough in history required stepping into uncertainty. The Wright brothers risked death in fragile machines of wood and cloth. Explorers risked oceans. Revolutionaries risked execution. Entrepreneurs risked ruin. Visionaries risked humiliation. The common denominator was not that they always succeeded, but that they always acted. Success is never guaranteed. Action is. And without action, success is impossible. Discipline prepares the soldier, action wins the battle. Belief fuels the dream, action makes it real. Vision paints the horizon, action builds the road to reach it. Purpose fills the heart, action fills the world. That is why action is the 8th law of human behavior, because until you act, nothing exists. And here lies another truth, action compounds. One small step, taken daily, becomes momentum. Momentum becomes habit. Habit becomes identity. Identity becomes destiny. Edison's daily experiments compounded into light. Ford's repeated attempts compounded into an industry. Carnegie's expansions compounded into an empire. Lincoln's daily decisions compounded into freedom. Disney's drawings compounded into a cultural phenomenon. Action does not need to be massive, it needs to be consistent. The small action you take today may feel insignificant, but repeated, it can outlast centuries. Yet action must be aligned with clarity and purpose. Blind action is chaos. Thoughtless action is waste. Greatness requires intentional action, movement guided by vision, fueled by purpose, sustained by discipline. Edison's experiments were not random, they were methodical. Ford's factories were not chaos, they were organized precision. Lincoln's actions were not impulsive, they were deliberate, calculated, anchored in principle. Disney's creations were not accidental, they were designed, refined, disciplined. Action without direction is noise. Action with direction is power. The psychology of action is also the psychology of identity. When you act, you are not only shaping the world, you are shaping yourself. Every action you take reinforces who you believe yourself to be. A man who acts courageously becomes courageous. A woman who acts with discipline becomes disciplined. Action reshapes the self by proving belief. You do not wait to become strong before acting. You act, and in action, you become strong. This is the deepest secret of growth. You do not think your way into identity, you act your way into it. So ask yourself, what vision lies in you that you have not acted upon? What belief burns in you that has not touched the world? What purpose fills you but has not been given form? The world does not reward intentions. It rewards results. The world does not remember those who thought, but those who built. It does not honor those who planned forever, but those who dared to move. Action is the eighth law of human behavior because it is the only proof that your inner fire exists. Without it, the fire dies inside you. With it, the fire lights the world. And when history speaks, it will not ask what you dreamed. It will ask, what did you do? Chapter 9. Gratitude as the strength of perspective. Gratitude is often misunderstood as something soft, sentimental, or secondary. A pleasant feeling for moments of comfort, a polite ritual before meals, a word whispered in times of plenty. But gratitude, in its true form, is neither soft nor weak. Gratitude is strength. Gratitude is perspective. It is the psychological armor that shields the mind against despair, the force that prevents abundance from rotting into entitlement, the discipline that transforms suffering into wisdom. Gratitude is not simply saying, thank you, it is the ability to see reality with clarity, to recognize not only what you lack but what you already possess, and to build from that foundation. Gratitude does not deny struggle, but it rescues you from being consumed by it. Every master of human behavior carried gratitude, though they rarely spoke of it as sentiment. For Abraham Lincoln, gratitude was the perspective that allowed him to endure personal tragedy without collapsing. He lost children, endured slander, carried the burden of a fractured nation, yet gratitude for the chance to serve, gratitude for the ideals he believed in, gratitude for the resilience of his people, these gave him strength to continue. Without gratitude, his sorrow would have broken him. For Thomas Edison, gratitude was the spark that kept failure from becoming defeat. Thousands of experiments ended in disappointment, but each attempt was met with gratitude for discovery, for progress, for another lesson learned. That gratitude reframed failure into information, which allowed persistence to thrive. Henry Ford's gratitude for the common man shaped his vision. He did not despise simplicity but honored it, believing that everyday families deserved mobility once reserved for the wealthy. Andrew Carnegie, even in his ruthless ambition, carried gratitude for the opportunities of America, and that gratitude later transformed into philanthropy, into libraries, universities, and institutions that multiplied his fortune into a legacy of knowledge. And Walt Disney's gratitude for imagination itself, for the gift of dreaming, turned setbacks and bankruptcies into stepping stones, because he was thankful not only for success but for the chance to create at all. Gratitude is the antidote to entitlement, and entitlement is one of the most destructive poisons of human psychology. Entitlement blinds people to effort, blinds them to sacrifice, blinds them to the reality that progress is purchased through struggle. Entitlement says, I deserve without labor. Gratitude says, I am honored to labor because the reward is worthy. Entitlement breeds resentment when life does not deliver instantly. Gratitude breeds resilience because it recognizes that life has already given much. The entitled complain about the lack of ease. The grateful build strength from difficulty. History remembers the grateful because they endure. It forgets the entitled because they collapse under the weight of their own illusions. Gratitude also transforms perception of suffering. To be human is to suffer. Loss, rejection, pain, failure are inevitable. The undisciplined mind sees suffering as cruelty. The grateful mind sees it as teacher. Lincoln's losses deepened his empathy. Edison's failures sharpened his process. Ford's bankruptcies hardened his resolve. Disney's betrayals refined his vision. Suffering without gratitude crushes. Suffering with gratitude transforms. It is not about denying pain, it is about extracting meaning from it. Gratitude does not erase wounds, but it turns them into wisdom. Psychology shows us that gratitude literally rewires the brain. Studies reveal that consistent gratitude practices shift neurological patterns, decreasing stress, increasing resilience, and heightening focus. But long before neuroscience confirmed this, history already displayed it. Gratitude was the mindset of those who endured beyond reason. Prisoners of war who survived years of captivity did so by clinging to gratitude for the smallest things: a memory, a sunrise, a whispered word of hope. Leaders who stood against impossible odds survived by gratitude for the mission entrusted to them. Gratitude expands endurance because it expands meaning. Gratitude is also the foundation of social intelligence. To influence others, you must first respect them. To respect them, you must be grateful for them, for their presence, their efforts, their humanity. Gratitude disarms pride. It builds trust. People feel when you value them, and they resist when you exploit them. Carnegie gave his fortune to knowledge not because he was forced, but because gratitude demanded he return what opportunity had given him. Lincoln spoke with humility because gratitude anchored him in service. Disney built worlds not just for himself but for audiences he was grateful for, audiences who believed in magic. Gratitude amplifies connection because it is the opposite of arrogance. The arrogant repel, the grateful attract. But gratitude must be cultivated deliberately, for the human mind defaults to scarcity. Left unchecked, we obsess over what is missing, what is wrong, what is insufficient. This is why gratitude is discipline, not accident. It is choosing daily to see abundance even in struggle. It is reminding yourself that breath itself is a gift, that opportunity itself is a privilege, that even failure is a form of progress. Gratitude is not denial of hardship, it is dominance over it. Gratitude also protects against the arrogance of success. Many rise through discipline and action only to collapse when success inflates them. Gratitude keeps success grounded. Edison never forgot the workers who supported his labs. Ford never forgot the families he served. Carnegie, for all his ambition, never forgot the poverty of his childhood. Disney never forgot the wonder of his youth. Gratitude tethered them to reality, preventing greatness from rotting into pride. Gratitude is the ninth law of human behavior because it is strength disguised as humility. It is perspective disguised as gentleness. It is resilience disguised as softness. But in truth, it is one of the hardest disciplines to maintain because it demands you resist the gravity of bitterness, envy, and entitlement. Yet those who master gratitude master perspective, and those who master perspective can endure any storm. So ask yourself, do you live in gratitude or in complaint? Do you focus on what is missing or on what is already present? Do you curse your suffering or do you extract wisdom from it? The choice defines not only your psychology but your influence. Because gratitude is not a luxury for when life is easy, it is a weapon for when life is hard. And in the end, gratitude ensures that when success arrives, you do not lose your soul to arrogance. It ensures that when failure comes, you do not lose your spirit to despair. Gratitude is the balance, the anchor, the perspective. It is not weakness. It is power. Chapter 10. Adaptability as the law of survival and mastery. Adaptability is the hidden law that governs both nature and society, the quiet principle that decides who endures and who vanishes. In the wild, the strongest creature does not always survive, nor the fastest, nor the most intelligent in isolation. Survival belongs to those who can adapt, those who can bend without breaking, those who can adjust their methods while holding fast to their purpose. The same is true of nations, companies, leaders, and individuals. History is littered with the bones of the rigid, those who clung to outdated methods, who resisted change, who mistook tradition for destiny. History is equally filled with the triumphs of the adaptive, those who could pivot when the world shifted, those who could change form without losing substance, those who understood that in a universe defined by change, adaptability is not weakness, it is the highest form of intelligence. Human behavior is, at its core, a negotiation with change. Every day the world shifts. Economies rise and fall, technologies advance, cultures evolve, relationships transform, opportunities appear and vanish. The undisciplined, the rigid, the inflexible collapse because they demand that the world conform to them. The adaptable rise because they conform to reality without surrendering principle. They are not slaves to circumstance, but they are masters of adjustment. This is the essence of adaptability, not to abandon your purpose, but to shift your strategy, not to betray your vision, but to alter your path, not to lose your identity, but to expand it. Abraham Lincoln was forced to adapt continuously. His presidency was not a straight path but a storm of shifting pressures. One day he faced opposition from abolitionists who said he was moving too slowly, the next from moderates who said he was moving too fast. He balanced fragile alliances, shifted policies when necessary, recalibrated strategies when the war demanded it. Yet through all adaptations his purpose remained clear: preserve the Union, extend liberty. His adaptability did not dilute his leadership. It strengthened it, because it allowed him to endure in a fluid, volatile environment. Thomas Edison's life was nothing but adaptability. Failure itself is the ultimate demand for adaptation, and Edison faced it thousands of times. Each failed experiment was a call to adjust, to refine, to redirect. Without adaptability, he would have quit. With adaptability, he transformed failure into feedback, confusion into knowledge, impossibility into progress. Henry Ford's success, too, was adaptation. He did not invent the automobile. Dozens of inventors had built cars before him. What Ford did was adapt the process, adapt the manufacturing system, adapt the business model until cars were not toys for the wealthy but tools for the people. Carnegie adapted steel to every new need: rails, bridges, skyscrapers, and in doing so, he shaped the physical backbone of America. And Walt Disney, perhaps more than any, embodied adaptability. He began as a cartoonist, faced bankruptcy, shifted to animation, was told sound would fail, proved it wrong, was told color was unnecessary, proved it essential, was told theme parks were absurd, built them anyway. At every stage, when one door shut, he adapted to find another, until imagination itself had industries built around it. Adaptability is not surrender. Many mistake it for weakness, for compromise, for lack of conviction. But true adaptability is conviction made flexible, principle expressed through evolution. The bamboo bends in the storm, but it does not break. The rigid oak snaps in the wind, though it seemed stronger. The adaptable leader can endure the storm of change because they bend where others resist, and when the storm ends, they are still standing. Adaptability is also the essence of intelligence in human interaction. Social intelligence itself is the art of adapting to people, of reading the subtle shifts of tone, posture, emotion, and adjusting your communication accordingly. To speak to a child as you would to a scholar is to fail. To treat a crowd as you would an individual is to fail. Influence depends on adaptability. The greatest speakers, leaders, negotiators are not those who memorize one script but those who adjust in the moment, sensing the room, shifting their pace, their words, their tone to resonate. Lincoln was a master of this. His speeches were not just grand, but calibrated to the audience, to the moment, to the pressure of history. Disney adapted his stories to the shifting moods of culture. Edison adapted his inventions to the needs of industry. Ford adapted his production to the realities of scale. Carnegie adapted his empire to the movements of markets. Adaptability was not their decoration, it was their survival. Adaptability is also humility. It requires acknowledging that your first idea may not be your best, that your current method may not last, that the world owes you nothing. The rigid cling to ego, refusing to admit change. The adaptable sacrifice pride to embrace evolution. This humility is not weakness, it is strength. The man who refuses to adapt because he cannot admit he was wrong destroys himself. The man who adapts becomes unstoppable because he can learn, adjust, refine, improve. Psychology shows that human beings resist change because change threatens identity. But adaptability is the art of expanding identity rather than losing it. Edison did not lose himself when he abandoned failed designs. He refined himself. Lincoln did not lose himself when he shifted policies. He aligned himself with greater clarity. Disney did not lose himself when he moved from short cartoons to feature films, then to parks. He expanded himself. Adaptability is not death of self, it is growth of self. Adaptability also demands courage. It is not easy to let go of what is familiar, to step into the uncertain, to try what may fail. The world worships certainty, and to adapt is to admit uncertainty. But courage is not the absence of fear, it is action in spite of it. The adaptable step into fear, into the unknown, because they know that clinging to the old guarantees irrelevance. The rigid die slowly. The adaptable risk boldly. And history honors the bold. Adaptability is the 10th law of human behavior because it is the law of survival. Without it, belief calcifies, discipline becomes routine, action becomes repetition, success becomes stagnation. With it, growth never ceases, evolution never halts, innovation never stops. Adaptability ensures that your destiny is not confined to the first version of yourself but can expand endlessly. So ask yourself, do you cling or do you adapt? Do you resist the storm until you snap, or do you bend until you rise again? Do you demand the world remain as it was, or do you evolve to meet it as it becomes? The answer will decide whether you endure or vanish. Because in a universe where change is constant, adaptability is not an option. It is survival. It is mastery. It is destiny. Chapter 11. Resilience as the shield of greatness. Resilience is the shield that protects the human spirit when life hurls its sharpest weapons. It is the unseen armor that allows men and women to endure suffering, humiliation, loss, rejection, and betrayal, and still rise, still move forward, still fight. Resilience is not comfort. It is not ease. It is the capacity to take the strike, to absorb the blow, to stumble under the weight of hardship and still refuse to stay on the ground. In human psychology, resilience is one of the most powerful forces of endurance, because it decides whether pain becomes your grave or your fuel. Every triumph in history, every victory that bent the arc of time, was built not on perfection, not on ease, but on resilience. Abraham Lincoln knew resilience like few others. He faced failure after failure long before he ever touched the presidency. Businesses collapsed. Elections were lost. Loved ones were buried. Depression clawed at his soul like a shadow that would not leave. Most men would have surrendered to despair, retreating into anonymity. But Lincoln endured. He did not avoid sorrow, he carried it. He did not deny pain, he walked through it. Resilience was not the absence of suffering. It was his refusal to let suffering define him. And because of that resilience, when the nation was engulfed in civil war, he could stand, because his soul had already been tempered in fire long before he entered the White House. Thomas Edison was resilient not because he succeeded, but because he failed so many times that failure itself became his training ground. Thousands of failed experiments would have broken a weaker man. Mockery would have silenced him. Poverty would have stopped him. But his resilience reframed failure into feedback, rejection into rehearsal, darkness into opportunity. He was not defined by the thousands of ways that did not work. He was defined by the one way that finally did, and by the resilience that carried him there. Henry Ford's resilience was tested through repeated bankruptcies. Investors abandoned him. Rivals mocked him. Economists dismissed him. Yet Ford refused to surrender. His resilience was not blind stubbornness. It was an unshakable belief that the vision in his mind was worth enduring humiliation for. And in time, his resilience gave birth to mobility itself, changing the rhythm of nations. Andrew Carnegie's resilience came in childhood poverty, in long hours of brutal labor, in the uncertainty of survival. But instead of letting hardship break him, he let it sharpen him. His resilience carried him from factory floors to boardrooms, from obscurity to dominance. And Walt Disney, betrayed, bankrupt, ridiculed, dismissed, carried resilience like a sword. When investors laughed, when banks rejected, when critics scoffed, his resilience allowed him to return again and again, until imagination itself stood immortalized in steel and stone. Resilience is more than endurance. Endurance is survival. Resilience is transformation. The resilient do not merely survive hardship, they emerge stronger because of it. Every scar becomes armor. Every failure becomes wisdom. Every loss becomes a deeper well of strength. The psychology of resilience reveals that it is not pain itself that destroys people, it is the meaning they attach to pain. The undisciplined see pain as cruelty, and it crushes them. The resilient see pain as teacher, and it shapes them. This is why two people can face the same tragedy and emerge differently, one bitter, one stronger. The difference is resilience. Resilience is also the foundation of influence. People trust those who do not collapse under pressure. They follow those who remain steady when storms rage. A leader's resilience becomes the resilience of the people. Lincoln's resilience gave courage to a fractured nation. Edison's resilience gave hope to inventors everywhere. Disney's resilience gave inspiration to creators who dared to dream. The resilient transmit strength because their very presence proves that survival is possible, that endurance is possible, that triumph after suffering is possible. But resilience is not automatic. It must be built. It is cultivated in the small battles of life before it is tested in the great ones. The child who learns to rise after falling learns resilience. The worker who endures rejection learns resilience. The student who persists through failure learns resilience. The entrepreneur who rebuilds after bankruptcy learns resilience. Each time you refuse to surrender, resilience grows stronger. It is not built in comfort. It is built in adversity. And that is why adversity is not always your enemy. It is your forge. Resilience demands patience. Pain does not vanish quickly. Struggles do not end instantly. Resilience accepts this and endures anyway. Edison did not know how many failures would come before success. Lincoln did not know how long war would last. Disney did not know how many rejections he would face. They endured without knowing the end date. That is resilience, the choice to keep walking when the horizon is hidden, to keep breathing when the weight feels unbearable, to keep fighting when every voice says surrender. Resilience is also humility. It requires admitting that you will fall, that you will fail, that you will hurt. Pride cannot be resilient, because pride refuses to bend, and what refuses to bend will break. The resilient bend, adapt, adjust, endure. They are not unbreakable because they never fall. They are unbreakable because falling does not end them. They are not made of stone, they are made of fire. And fire endures not by resisting wind, but by consuming it. In psychology, resilience is one of the greatest predictors of long-term success. Not intelligence, not talent, not wealth, but the ability to recover. The student who fails but continues will surpass the genius who quits. The worker who is rejected but persists will surpass the talented who collapse. The leader who is betrayed but continues to serve will surpass the charismatic who abandons their mission at the first wound. Resilience is the multiplier of all other virtues. Belief gives you reason, resilience keeps it alive. Vision gives you horizon, resilience keeps you walking. Discipline gives you structure, resilience keeps you steady when the structure shakes. Action moves you forward, resilience keeps you moving when progress is invisible. Resilience is the 11th law of human behavior because it is the shield. Without it, every strike destroys you. Without it, every failure defines you. Without it, every loss ends you. With it, nothing can permanently stop you. With it, failure becomes fuel. With it, betrayal becomes refinement. With it, pain becomes transformation. So ask yourself, do you collapse when life strikes, or do you rise again? Do you allow wounds to silence you, or do you let scars remind you that you survived? Do you surrender to storms, or do you walk through them with shield raised, knowing that resilience is not about never falling but about never staying down? Because in the end, the measure of your life will not be how often you fell, but how often you rose. The world does not remember the ones who stayed down. It remembers the ones who stood, scarred but unbroken, wounded but unyielding, weary but still walking. That is resilience. That is greatness. Chapter 12. Learning as the Engine of Transformation. Learning is the eternal engine of human growth, the mechanism by which the mind evolves, adapts, and transcends its own limits. Without learning, belief stagnates, vision shrinks, discipline stiffens into routine, action repeats itself into futility, resilience becomes only survival instead of progress. Learning is the process by which failure becomes wisdom, by which information becomes intelligence, by which struggle becomes strength. It is the power that has lifted humanity from caves to cathedrals, from torches to electric light, from isolated tribes to global civilization. Learning is not a luxury for the curious. It is the necessity for anyone who refuses to remain chained to mediocrity. Human behavior is fundamentally shaped by learning. From the moment you are born, you begin absorbing patterns, imitating voices, copying gestures, constructing meaning from the world around you. The child learns language not from instruction manuals but from imitation, repetition, correction, adjustment. The same principle follows you into adulthood. You learn through trial, through feedback, through observation. Yet most people after a certain age abandon learning. They lock themselves into rigid patterns of thought, defend their ignorance with pride, and call it maturity. But true maturity is not the death of learning. True maturity is its expansion. Abraham Lincoln understood this. With little formal education, he taught himself law by candlelight, devoured books with relentless hunger, sharpened his mind through debate, reflection, and endless practice. His ability to lead a fractured nation did not emerge from birthright but from years of disciplined self-learning. Thomas Edison, often mislabeled as a genius, was in truth a relentless learner. Every failed experiment was not wasted but studied, recorded, examined. His genius was not innate brilliance but a mind trained to learn faster, deeper, and more persistently than others. Henry Ford built his empire not merely by invention but by studying processes, by learning from other industries, by absorbing lessons from failure and adapting them into new methods. Andrew Carnegie, born into poverty, educated himself through libraries he borrowed from, cultivating a hunger for knowledge that later drove his philanthropy. And Walt Disney, his entire life was learning in motion. He studied animation when it was dismissed as novelty, he studied sound when others resisted, he studied color when critics claimed it was excessive, and later he studied architecture, engineering, and storytelling in ways that allowed him to blend imagination with infrastructure. Learning is the discipline of humility. To learn is to admit you do not know. Pride resists learning because pride fears exposure. But humility is the doorway to growth. Lincoln humbled himself before books. Edison humbled himself before failure. Disney humbled himself before rejection. Ford humbled himself before bankruptcy. Carnegie humbled himself before libraries. Each of them grew because they admitted they were not yet complete. That is the paradox of greatness. Those who are most willing to admit ignorance are those who rise to mastery. Learning is also the foundation of resilience. Without learning, failure repeats. With learning, failure refines. Every setback becomes a teacher, every mistake becomes a curriculum. Edison's thousands of failed experiments did not destroy him because each was reframed as learning. Disney's bankruptcies did not end him because each taught him lessons about business, about partnerships, about vision. Ford's bankruptcies taught him how to refine manufacturing, how to simplify design. Lincoln's losses taught him patience, taught him the rhythm of politics, taught him how to navigate opposition. Carnegie's struggles taught him how to seize opportunity, how to expand when others hesitated. The resilient are not simply those who endure, they are those who learn. Endurance without learning is stubbornness. Endurance with learning is evolution. Learning is also the foundation of social intelligence. To read people is to learn them. To influence people is to learn their patterns, their desires, their fears. Every conversation is an opportunity to learn. Every silence is information. Every reaction is feedback. The socially intelligent are not those who memorize tactics, they are those who constantly learn, who enter each interaction as students as much as leaders, who refine their understanding daily. Lincoln listened as much as he spoke, and because he listened, he learned the fears and hopes of his people. Carnegie learned the psychology of his workers and his rivals. Edison learned the needs of industries. Disney learned the emotions of audiences. Influence is not simply expression, it is absorption. But learning is not always pleasant. It demands vulnerability. It demands mistakes. It demands the willingness to look foolish, to be corrected, to stumble. That is why most resist it. They prefer the illusion of competence over the humility of growth. But history does not honor the proud who refuse to learn. It honors those who risked humiliation to expand their minds. Every innovation required men and women willing to appear foolish until they succeeded. Edison was ridiculed, Disney was mocked, Ford was doubted, Lincoln was dismissed. Their willingness to learn in the open, to fail publicly, to adapt visibly, that was their hidden power. Learning is also endless. It does not stop with youth, with school, with career. The moment you stop learning is the moment you begin dying. Carnegie never stopped learning. Even at the height of wealth, he was a student of philosophy, of ethics, of humanity. Edison never stopped learning. Even as he grew old, he remained in his laboratory, experimenting until death. Disney never stopped learning, expanding from animation to film to architecture to storytelling. The masters never see themselves as finished. They see themselves as permanent apprentices of life. Psychology confirms that the brain itself thrives on learning. Neuroplasticity, the ability of the brain to rewire, to adapt, to strengthen, is activated through learning. This means that every time you learn, you are literally reshaping your brain, expanding your intelligence, strengthening your mind. The old belief that intelligence is fixed is a lie. History has always shown the opposite. Intelligence grows where hunger for learning persists. Lincoln was not born brilliant. Edison was not born genius. Ford was not born innovator. Disney was not born visionary. They became these things through relentless learning. Learning is also the essence of adaptability. Without learning, adaptation is blind guesswork. With learning, adaptation becomes precise. Edison adapted because he learned. Ford adapted because he learned. Lincoln adapted because he learned. Disney adapted because he learned. Learning is the constant adjustment of mind to reality, the perpetual refinement of perception, the unending sharpening of skill. But perhaps the greatest power of learning is that it gives meaning to failure. Without learning, failure is meaningless pain. With learning, failure is progress. Without learning, rejection is humiliation. With learning, rejection is redirection. Without learning, loss is only grief. With learning, loss is teacher. Learning redeems suffering. It turns tragedy into wisdom. It transforms defeat into preparation. It ensures that nothing is wasted. Chapter 13. Focus as the weapon of mastery. Focus is the blade that cuts through the noise of life. It is the power to channel all thought, all energy, all action toward one point until reality itself bends. Focus is not merely attention. It is sustained attention, disciplined attention, undivided attention. In a world drowning in distraction, true focus is rarer than genius, rarer than talent, rarer even than vision. And yet it is the defining trait of every figure who has achieved greatness. Without focus, belief scatters, vision diffuses, purpose weakens, action becomes diluted, and learning dissolves into trivia. With focus, all these forces converge into a beam so powerful it pierces through obstacles that destroy lesser men. Human behavior is shaped by focus because the mind is a magnifying glass. Wherever it rests, energy flows. Wherever it flows, growth occurs. The tragedy is that most people scatter their focus across 1,000 trivialities, wondering why nothing in their life grows to significance. They scroll endlessly, consume endlessly, chase endlessly, and in doing so, their power leaks away like water through open fingers. But history proves that the greats, those who shaped entire civilizations, mastered one skill above all others: the art of focus. Abraham Lincoln focused not on popularity but on principle. His presidency was surrounded by critics, enemies, traitors, and doubters. Had he allowed his attention to fracture into every insult, every betrayal, every distraction, he would have collapsed. But his focus remained fixed: preserve the Union, expand liberty. He endured slander because he was too focused on destiny to be consumed by noise. Thomas Edison focused with an intensity few could comprehend. He did not dabble in dozens of pursuits. He lived in his laboratory, eating, sleeping, experimenting. He funneled his entire being into invention, testing thousands of variations on a single idea until one worked. That focus turned nights into light, silence into sound, possibility into industry. Without it, his talent would have dissolved into scattered projects and forgotten failures. Henry Ford's focus was not on luxury but on accessibility. Others built cars for elites. Ford refused distraction and focused on making vehicles affordable for the common man. That singular focus birthed the assembly line and transformed transportation forever. Andrew Carnegie focused on steel. Not on dozens of ventures, not on scattered opportunities, but on mastering one industry until it became the skeleton of modern civilization. And Walt Disney, his focus was imagination. He refused to dilute it with trends, with temporary gains, with easy compromises. His focus on wonder, on storytelling, on immersion turned him from a bankrupt cartoonist into the architect of dreams that still outlive him. Focus is the weapon that protects vision from erosion. Vision without focus is daydream. Purpose without focus is sentiment. Discipline without focus is wasted motion. Action without focus is busyness mistaken for progress. Learning without focus is trivia mistaken for wisdom. But when focus enters, everything sharpens. Belief becomes conviction. Vision becomes blueprint. Purpose becomes fire. Discipline becomes momentum. Action becomes impact. Learning becomes mastery. Focus is also the foundation of mastery itself. To master any skill, you must direct attention repeatedly, consistently, intensely. The athlete masters movement by focusing thousands of hours on precision. The musician masters sound by focusing relentlessly on practice. The leader masters influence by focusing on people, on communication, on strategy. Greatness is not an explosion of talent but a lifetime of focused repetition. Talent scattered dies forgotten. Talent focused becomes immortal. But focus demands sacrifice. To focus on one thing is to say no to 1,000 others. This is why most people fail to focus. They cannot let go. They want to chase every opportunity, respond to every voice, indulge every distraction. They confuse activity with achievement, motion with momentum, multitasking with mastery. But history shows that greatness belongs to the few who can sacrifice the many for the one. Lincoln sacrificed popularity for unity. Edison sacrificed sleep for invention. Ford sacrificed luxury for accessibility. Carnegie sacrificed variety for steel. Disney sacrificed security for imagination. Focus is always costly, but the cost of distraction is greater: mediocrity, regret, obscurity. The psychology of focus reveals another truth: the human mind cannot hold unlimited attention. It is a finite resource. Every distraction drains it. Every interruption fractures it. The disciplined protect it like treasure. The undisciplined squander it like sand. In modern society, distraction has become weaponized. Entire industries profit from stealing your focus, scattering your attention, addicting you to noise. To master focus today is not merely discipline, it is rebellion. To focus in a distracted age is to rise above the crowd, to claim sovereignty over your mind in a world that seeks to control it. Focus is also essential in social intelligence. To truly connect with another person, you must give them undivided attention. Most people do not listen, they wait to speak. Most do not see, they glance. Most do not connect, they skim. The rare individual who focuses fully, who listens deeply, who watches attentively, who engages without distraction, possesses influence far beyond words. People feel when they are truly seen, truly heard, truly valued. Focus is presence, and presence is power. Lincoln's presence in conversation was legendary. He made men feel as though they were the only soul in the room. Disney's focus on audiences allowed him to craft experiences that touched millions. Edison's focus on problems allowed him to solve them where others failed. Carnegie's focus on expansion allowed him to dominate. Ford's focus on efficiency reshaped industry. Focus amplified their intelligence because it magnified their connection to reality. Focus must also endure time. Anyone can focus briefly. True focus is sustained across years. Edison's focus on invention did not waver after thousands of failures. Lincoln's focus on unity did not waver after years of war. Ford's focus on accessibility did not waver after repeated bankruptcies. Disney's focus on imagination did not waver after betrayals and bankruptcy. Sustained focus is the furnace where destiny is forged. Focus is the 13th law of human behavior because it is the weapon. Without it, all other virtues scatter into nothingness. With it, even the smallest action becomes unstoppable, even the weakest individual becomes formidable, even the quietest voice becomes thunder. So ask yourself, where is your focus? Do you scatter it into trivialities, into distractions, into noise, into endless consumption? Or do you sharpen it into a blade, directing it toward what matters most? Do you drift with fractured attention, or do you pierce with concentrated will? Because in the end, mastery belongs not to those who dabble in everything, but to those who focus on something until the world itself cannot ignore them. Focus is the weapon, and in your hands, it can carve destiny. Chapter 14. Sacrifice as the Price of Immortality. Sacrifice is the price every great life must pay. It is the silent contract written in blood, sweat, and years, the unavoidable toll collected from anyone who dares to rise above mediocrity. There is no greatness without sacrifice. There is no empire without loss. There is no mastery without something given up. Sacrifice is the proof of seriousness, the measure of commitment, the weight that separates those who wish from those who will. Most people desire success, but few are willing to pay its price. They want the crown but not the thorns, the glory but not the wounds, the victory but not the battles. But history is merciless in this truth. Those who reach immortality are those who embrace sacrifice. Abraham Lincoln sacrificed comfort for conviction. He could have lived a quiet life as a lawyer, secure, respected, untroubled by war and politics. But purpose demanded sacrifice, and he gave it. He sacrificed reputation, enduring slander and insult that would have broken weaker men. He sacrificed peace of mind, carrying the grief of a fractured nation. He sacrificed personal joy, burying children in the midst of war, carrying sorrow like a cloak while still leading. His greatness was not only in speeches or decisions but in the sacrifices he bore silently so the Union might live. Thomas Edison sacrificed time, energy, even health. He worked endless hours in his laboratory, sleeping on benches, consuming himself in experiments while others rested. He sacrificed stability, enduring financial struggle, ridicule, and uncertainty. He sacrificed ordinary pleasures, because his devotion to invention demanded everything. The light bulb, the phonograph, the motion picture, all were purchased with sacrifice, with years no one could give back. Henry Ford sacrificed acceptance. His ideas were mocked, his vision doubted, his failures ridiculed. He sacrificed wealth again and again in bankrupt ventures until he built something that lasted. He sacrificed social approval, breaking from conventions, dismissing traditions, enduring contempt. His discipline demanded sacrifice, and he paid until cars rolled through every street in America. Andrew Carnegie sacrificed his youth in factories, working long hours for little pay, trading childhood for survival. He sacrificed ease in adulthood, driving himself relentlessly to expand, to dominate, to grow. And later, he sacrificed wealth itself, giving away the vast majority of his fortune to education, to libraries, to knowledge. His sacrifice turned money into legacy. Walt Disney sacrificed endlessly. He sacrificed comfort, facing nights of hunger when his businesses failed. He sacrificed trust, learning the pain of betrayal when partners stole his creations. He sacrificed safety, mortgaging everything again and again for visions others dismissed as absurd. And he sacrificed time, pouring years into ideas that seemed to collapse, only to rise again as cultural monuments. The castles, the films, the parks were all built on sacrifice. Sacrifice is the proof of authenticity. Without it, words are hollow, visions are fantasies, beliefs are cheap. Anyone can say they believe. Anyone can dream. But sacrifice asks, what are you willing to give up for it? What hours, what comforts, what pleasures, what securities are you willing to lay on the altar of destiny? That is the test. And most fail it not because they are weak, but because they are unwilling to surrender the lesser for the greater. Psychology teaches us that the human mind is wired for comfort. We seek safety, ease, pleasure. Sacrifice is unnatural. It feels like loss, like deprivation, like pain. But the paradox is this: sacrifice is not loss. Sacrifice is exchange. It is giving up the lesser for the greater. The athlete sacrifices indulgence to gain excellence. The student sacrifices leisure to gain wisdom. The leader sacrifices popularity to gain principle. The visionary sacrifices safety to gain immortality. Sacrifice is not the death of joy, it is the birth of meaning. Social intelligence itself requires sacrifice. To truly understand others, you must sacrifice ego, silence yourself, listen deeply. To influence, you must sacrifice selfishness, offering service, vision, direction. Lincoln sacrificed his personal peace to carry a nation's burden. Carnegie sacrificed personal greed to elevate future generations. Disney sacrificed personal security to give wonder to millions. Sacrifice is not only personal, it multiplies. What you give up can elevate others. What you endure can inspire others. What you lose can liberate others. But sacrifice is painful. There is no denying it. Lincoln carried grief. Edison carried exhaustion. Ford carried ridicule. Carnegie carried guilt. Disney carried betrayal. Sacrifice is never clean. It scars, it wounds, burns. That is why it is the ultimate filter. It reveals who truly desires greatness and who only pretends. Many begin the journey, but when sacrifice demands its toll, they quit. The greats endure because they know the pain is temporary but the legacy is eternal. Sacrifice must also be continual. It is not paid once, but over and over. Edison did not make one sacrifice. He sacrificed daily. Lincoln did not suffer once. He carried sacrifice until his assassination. Ford sacrificed again and again until the vision was reality. Disney sacrificed through repeated bankruptcies before the world finally saw his dream. Sacrifice is not an event, it is a lifestyle. It is the price you pay every day until destiny finally arrives. And sacrifice is the seed of immortality. When you sacrifice, you trade something perishable for something permanent. Time given becomes legacy remembered. Wealth given becomes knowledge preserved. Comfort surrendered becomes greatness achieved. Sacrifice is the transformation of the temporary into the eternal. That is why the names of Lincoln, Edison, Ford, Carnegie, and Disney still echo, because their sacrifices bought them permanence. Sacrifice is the 14th law of human behavior because it is the price. Without it, every dream collapses, every vision fades, every purpose dies. With it, dreams materialize, visions endure, purposes live. So ask yourself, what are you willing to sacrifice? What comforts hold you back? What fears keep you safe but small? What securities keep you alive but not alive fully? Your answer defines not only your destiny but your legacy. Because in the end, the world will not ask what you wanted. It will ask what you gave. And those who gave much, those who sacrificed deeply, are the ones who will be remembered. Chapter 15. Courage as the breath of the soul. Courage is the breath of the soul, the force that animates belief, purpose, discipline, and vision when all else trembles. Without courage, belief remains hidden, vision remains unspoken, purpose remains untested, and discipline remains contained within safe boundaries. Courage is the key that unlocks destiny, the moment when you decide to act not because fear has vanished, but because fear no longer commands you. It is not the absence of fear, but the defiance of it. Courage is the difference between those who live timidly in the shadow of possibility and those who step into the light of reality and claim it, scars and all. Human psychology has always been at war with fear. Fear is primal, ancient, embedded in the nervous system as the first guardian of survival. Fear protected tribes from predators, kept men from cliffs, kept children from fire. But in the modern world, fear has grown deceptive. It no longer merely protects us from danger, it traps us in comfort. It whispers not just, "Don't touch the fire," but, "Don't risk rejection, don't try the impossible, don't stand apart from the crowd." Fear becomes the invisible prison that most never escape. Courage is the prison break. It is the rebellion of the spirit against the chains of timidity. Abraham Lincoln embodied courage not in physical battle, but in moral conviction. He stood for unity when the nation demanded division. He stood for liberty when compromise would have been easier. His courage was not flamboyant, it was steady, quiet, relentless. It allowed him to endure insults, threats, betrayals, and ultimately the weight of civil war. That courage was not a lack of fear. He knew fear intimately. But he chose conviction over safety. He chose destiny over peace. And that choice, repeated, made him immortal. Thomas Edison carried courage in every experiment. Failure was not just likely, it was certain. Thousands of failed attempts could have humiliated, bankrupted, and silenced him. But courage pushed him to risk reputation, time, and sanity in pursuit of light. His courage was not dramatic, it was daily. It was the courage to face disappointment again and again without surrender. Henry Ford's courage was vision against ridicule. To stand and declare that every ordinary family would drive a car in an era when automobiles were considered toys for the wealthy, that was courage. He risked mockery, risked financial ruin, risked social contempt. But his courage was stronger than their laughter, and because of it, the roads of the world were transformed. Andrew Carnegie's courage was ambition in a hostile world. A poor immigrant child, he dared to believe he could rise to command industries. He risked scorn, he risked failure, he risked overreach. And later, his courage was shown again when he gave away his fortune, daring to trust that wealth could become wisdom, that libraries could become armies of knowledge. Walt Disney's courage was imagination itself. In a world governed by practicality, he dared to dream openly. He risked betrayal, bankruptcy, rejection, and still he pushed forward. His courage was not only in the creation of cartoons but in the audacity to demand wonder from a cynical world. He believed in castles that did not exist, in lands that lived only in sketches, in laughter when others mocked him. That was courage, not delusion, but conviction. Courage is not loud. Courage does not always roar. Often, courage whispers, "Try again tomorrow." It is the voice that refuses to die when everything else collapses. It is the decision to step forward when your knees tremble. It is the choice to speak truth when silence is safer. It is the will to walk into storms when retreat is easier. Courage is quiet persistence more often than it is dramatic defiance. But in either form, it is the breath that gives life to greatness. Psychology teaches us that courage is built in the same way muscles are, through repeated exposure to difficulty. The child who speaks despite shyness grows in courage. The worker who attempts despite fear of failure grows in courage. The leader who decides despite uncertainty grows in courage. Courage is not innate. It is cultivated. It is practiced. Every act of courage, no matter how small, builds the capacity for greater acts. Edison's first risk led to thousands more. Lincoln's first stand for principle led to the presidency. Disney's first cartoon led to empires of imagination. Courage compounds. Courage also multiplies in groups. One act of courage inspires another. A single leader standing firm can give courage to millions. Lincoln's courage inspired soldiers to fight. Edison's courage inspired inventors to persist. Disney's courage inspired artists to dream. Courage is contagious because it reminds others of their own strength. That is why leaders must embody it, because their courage becomes the courage of nations. Yet courage is also lonely. To be courageous is to step where others refuse. It is to endure isolation, ridicule, abandonment. The crowd does not celebrate courage until after it succeeds. Before then, they call it madness. Edison was called foolish. Ford was called reckless. Disney was called insane. Lincoln was called dangerous. Carnegie was called arrogant. Courage always wears the mask of insanity before history unmasks it as genius. That is the burden. You must carry the weight of ridicule until time vindicates you. Courage is also inseparable from fear. The two exist as twins. Without fear, there is no courage, only safety. True courage is not found where there is no risk. True courage is found where risk is undeniable, where fear is heavy, and yet the choice is made to move forward anyway. The soldier on the battlefield, the leader at the podium, the inventor in the lab, the entrepreneur in debt, the artist before critics, they all know fear. But they also know that fear cannot decide destiny. Social intelligence requires courage as much as understanding. To tell truth to power demands courage. To confront injustice demands courage. To challenge tradition demands courage. To innovate where others cling to safety demands courage. Every act of influence, every step of leadership, every breakthrough in history is written not only in intelligence, but in courage. Without it, the intelligent remains silent. Without it, the visionary remains hidden. Without it, the gifted remain unused. Courage is the 15th law of human behavior because it is the breath. Without it, the body of destiny suffocates. With it, everything breathes: belief, vision, purpose, discipline, resilience, focus. Courage is the oxygen of greatness. So ask yourself, where do you shrink when you should stand? Where do you retreat when you should advance? Where do you silence yourself when truth demands your voice? What dreams have you buried because fear convinced you they were too risky? Because in the end, courage will not ask if you were afraid. It will ask, did you move anyway? Did you live despite fear, or did you let fear live for you? Did you breathe deeply, or did you suffocate quietly in the shadows of safety? The world does not remember the fearful. It remembers the courageous. And courage, even when it fails, is greater than fear, even when it wins. Chapter 16. Integrity as the Foundation of Trust. Integrity is the foundation upon which all true greatness stands. It is the invisible spine that holds the soul upright, the inner compass that guides behavior when no one is watching, the unshakable alignment between what you believe, what you speak, and what you do. Without integrity, belief is manipulation, vision is illusion, purpose is fraud, and influence is corruption. Integrity is the law that ensures power does not decay into tyranny, that achievement does not rot into arrogance, that leadership does not collapse into hypocrisy. It is the rarest virtue in a world intoxicated with appearances, because integrity does not ask, how do I look? It asks, who am I when the lights are gone, when the applause fades, when I am alone with myself? Human behavior is anchored in trust, and trust cannot exist without integrity. You cannot influence deeply without it. You cannot lead enduringly without it. People may follow manipulation for a season, but eventually, the mask cracks. Integrity is not the loudest voice, but it is the voice that endures. And in history, the legacies that shine brightest are not only those of brilliance or strength, but of integrity. Abraham Lincoln's integrity was the bedrock of his leadership. He was called a tyrant by enemies, mocked by critics, pressured by allies, yet he did not bend truth to win favor. He spoke what he believed even when it cost him, acted upon his convictions even when it risked his political future. He signed the Emancipation Proclamation not because it was popular, it was not, but because it was right. Integrity does not bend to convenience, it stands with principle. That is why Lincoln's words still carry weight, because his actions match them. Thomas Edison's integrity was not perfect, no human's is, but his relentless alignment between experimentation and persistence revealed integrity to his craft. He did not fake invention, he earned it. His failures were real, his breakthroughs were real. He refused shortcuts that would compromise the truth of his discoveries. His integrity to the process itself made him a model of scientific resilience. Henry Ford's integrity was his focus on accessibility. He could have built luxury cars, indulged elites, catered to wealth, but he did not. His vision was for the common man, and he aligned his factories, his methods, his strategies with that integrity. He was not perfect, none of these men were, but his integrity to his original mission created mobility for millions. Andrew Carnegie's integrity was tested in wealth. Power corrupts easily, but Carnegie chose to align his fortune with his belief in knowledge. He built libraries, funded universities, invested in education. His integrity was not just in how he gained wealth, but in how he used it. He believed opportunity should be multiplied, and his actions matched his belief. Walt Disney's integrity was imagination. He refused to surrender it for cynicism, refused to dilute it for quick profit, refused to abandon it when investors mocked him. He could have chosen safer paths, but his integrity to wonder, to storytelling, to the joy of children, anchored his work. That is why even decades after his death, the integrity of his vision is still alive in the laughter of children around the world. Integrity is the bridge between words and reality. The world is filled with voices, filled with promises, filled with declarations. But most are hollow because they lack integrity. Integrity is the difference between noise and truth. It is the reason some words echo for centuries and others vanish within minutes. When Lincoln spoke of liberty, his integrity gave it weight. When Disney spoke of imagination, his integrity made it believable. Integrity transforms words into power because it anchors them in action. Psychology teaches us that hypocrisy destroys influence. When people sense contradiction between words and actions, trust disintegrates. You can be intelligent, charismatic, talented, but without integrity, people will not follow you deeply. They may admire your talent, but they will not trust your soul. Trust is born not from perfection but from consistency. People forgive mistakes, but they do not forgive hypocrisy. They forgive failure, but they do not forgive betrayal. Integrity is not about being flawless. It is about being aligned. Integrity is also the test of power. Power without integrity corrupts. Wealth without integrity enslaves. Influence without integrity manipulates. History has countless examples of leaders who rose with brilliance but fell without integrity. Tyrants, dictators, frauds, their lack of integrity eroded everything they built. And history also shows those who endured because integrity anchored them. Lincoln endured because his integrity carried him through division. Edison endured because his integrity to process kept him innovating. Carnegie endured because his integrity to opportunity shaped his philanthropy. Disney endured because his integrity to imagination made his work timeless. But integrity is not easy. It demands sacrifice. It demands that you lose opportunities others gain because you will not cheat. It demands that you suffer ridicule because you will not lie. It demands that you walk alone because you will not follow the crowd into compromise. It demands that you hold steady when temptation promises shortcuts. Integrity is the most difficult virtue because it cannot be faked. You can pretend courage, you can fake kindness, you can disguise talent, but integrity is proven only by living it. Integrity is also internal. It is not only about what others see, it is about what you see when you face yourself in silence. You can lie to the world, but you cannot lie to your soul. The undisciplined lie fractured, saying one thing, doing another, believing neither. The disciplined live aligned, their thoughts, words, and actions moving in harmony. Integrity gives peace of mind because the inner war is over. The hypocrite fights himself every day. The man of integrity walks whole. In social intelligence, integrity is magnetic. People sense when you are genuine. They may not analyze it consciously, but they feel it. They know when your respect is real, when your interest is authentic, when your service is honest. Integrity multiplies influence because it multiplies trust. Lincoln's speeches worked because people trusted his integrity. Disney's dreams worked because people trusted his sincerity. Carnegie's philanthropy worked because people trusted his motive. Trust cannot be purchased. It can only be earned through integrity. Integrity is the 16th law of human behavior because it is the foundation. Without it, greatness crumbles. Without it, wealth corrupts. Without it, leadership collapses. Without it, discipline decays. With it, greatness endures. With it, wealth multiplies into legacy. With it, leadership inspires. With it, discipline strengthens. So ask yourself, are your words aligned with your actions? Do you speak of vision but act in distraction? Do you speak of purpose but live in compromise? Do you speak of discipline but surrender to impulse? Do you speak of truth but hide in lies? The world will not believe what you say. It will believe what you do. And what you do, repeated, is your integrity. Because in the end, the measure of your life will not be how loud you spoke, but how aligned you lived. Integrity is the invisible spine of the soul, and without it, even giants collapse. But with it, even ordinary men become immortal. Chapter 17. Ambition as the Fire of Ascent. Ambition is the inner fire that refuses to let a human being remain small. It is the restless hunger that drives men and women to reach beyond the ordinary, to stretch beyond survival, to rise beyond what is comfortable and seize what is possible. Without ambition, even the most gifted lives wither into mediocrity. Without ambition, talent remains dormant, vision remains unseen, purpose remains idle, and discipline becomes routine without direction. But with ambition, even the weakest can rise, even the poorest can build empires, even the overlooked can leave legacies. Ambition is not simply desire. It is desire sharpened into determination, hunger disciplined into momentum, longing forged into will. Human behavior is animated by ambition because ambition is the fuel of action. Every invention, every empire, every breakthrough was born from someone who refused to settle. The difference between those who remain forgotten and those whose names echo through history is ambition, the refusal to accept limits as final. Most people adjust their dreams downward until they fit the size of their comfort. The ambitious adjust their comfort downward until it fits the size of their dream. That is why ambition feels dangerous to the ordinary. It threatens their complacency. It challenges their excuses. It exposes their mediocrity. And that is why ambition is always misunderstood. Abraham Lincoln's ambition was not for wealth or personal glory. His ambition was larger, to hold a fractured nation together, to extend liberty, to prove that democracy could endure fire. He was mocked as too ambitious when he sought office, too ambitious when he pressed for abolition, too ambitious when he refused compromise. But his ambition was not arrogance, it was conviction. It was the fire that carried him through defeats, through insults, through the endless night of war. Without ambition, he would have faded into obscurity as another forgotten lawyer. With it, he became one of the most enduring figures in history. Thomas Edison's ambition was relentless. He did not simply want to tinker with gadgets. He wanted to illuminate the world, to transform human life with invention. His ambition made him ruthless with his time, relentless with his experiments, tireless with his failures. Ordinary curiosity could not have sustained thousands of defeats. Only ambition could. Ambition was the fuel that made him endure ridicule, the fire that turned laboratories into furnaces of creation. Henry Ford's ambition was not modest. He did not seek to make a car for a few. He sought to put the world on wheels. His ambition was mocked as absurd, ridiculed as impossible, dismissed as reckless. But his hunger was greater than their doubt. Ambition gave him the courage to risk bankruptcy again and again until his vision rolled into reality. His assembly line was not born from comfort but from relentless ambition. Andrew Carnegie's ambition was colossal. He did not settle for surviving as a poor immigrant. He demanded to rise, to command industry, to dominate steel. His ambition consumed him, but later, it also transformed into ambition for knowledge. He gave away his fortune not because his fire dimmed, but because it shifted focus. His ambition was not only to build wealth, but to leave a legacy of wisdom. And Walt Disney, his ambition was audacity itself. He was not content to draw cartoons. He wanted to reimagine imagination. He wanted to create worlds, to turn fantasy into stone and music, to transform culture itself. His ambition made him gamble everything repeatedly, endure betrayal, face bankruptcy, and still rise again. He did not stop until castles stood where there was only dirt, until dreams walked where there had been only paper. That kind of ambition is not ordinary desire, it is sacred fire. Ambition is dangerous because it burns. It demands sacrifice. It disrupts comfort. It sets people apart from the crowd. That is why ambition is feared. Mediocrity resents it. Society tries to tame it. Friends try to calm it. Critics try to shame it. But those who carry ambition as fire cannot extinguish it. They may stumble, they may fall, they may burn, but they cannot live without striving upward. To ask them to abandon ambition is to ask them to abandon breath itself. Psychology reveals that ambition shapes behavior through identity. Ambitious people act differently because they see themselves differently. They are not content with good enough. They interpret failure differently, not as final but as feedback. They interpret rejection differently, not as humiliation, but as redirection. They interpret risk differently, not as danger, but as necessity. Ambition rewires the mind to see the world not as it is, but as it could be. But ambition without integrity becomes corruption. Ambition without purpose becomes greed. Ambition without discipline becomes chaos. History has shown tyrants fueled by ambition unchecked. Their hunger destroyed nations, enslaved millions, devoured everything. This is why ambition must be anchored. It must be fused with purpose, restrained by integrity, guided by vision. When ambition serves only the self, it destroys. When ambition serves humanity, it builds immortality. Ambition is also contagious. The fire in one ignites the fire in others. Lincoln's ambition for unity gave strength to soldiers who fought in fields of blood. Edison's ambition for invention inspired generations of innovators. Ford's ambition for mobility unleashed industries that transformed the world. Carnegie's ambition for knowledge built libraries that elevated the poor. Disney's ambition for imagination awakened the dreamer in millions. One man's ambition can ripple through centuries. That is its true power. Yet ambition is also lonely. To be ambitious is to walk alone often, because few understand the hunger. The ambitious are ridiculed, doubted, envied, feared. They endure long nights of obscurity, long seasons of rejection, long years of unseen labor. But this loneliness is the price of fire. The crowd cannot see the summit until one man climbs it. They cannot imagine the castle until one man builds it. They cannot believe in the impossible until one man proves it. Ambition demands solitude because it demands vision beyond the crowd. Ambition is the 17th law of human behavior because it is the fire of ascent. Without it, you remain where you are, even if you are disciplined, even if you are intelligent, even if you are skilled. Ambition is what demands more, what drives you higher, what pushes you through pain into possibility. So ask yourself, is your ambition alive, or have you buried it under fear and conformity? Do you hunger for more, or have you convinced yourself that safety is enough? Do you dare to climb, or have you chosen to crawl? Do you ignite others with your fire, or have you let the flame in you die? Because in the end, history is not written by those who were comfortable. It is written by those who were ambitious enough to disturb the world, to challenge its limits, to refuse its chains. Ambition is the fire that consumes mediocrity and forges immortality. Chapter 18. Faith as the force beyond sight. Faith is the force that carries the human spirit into realms where logic falters. where evidence disappears, where only conviction remains. It is the substance of things hoped for, the assurance of things not yet seen. Faith is not naive optimism, not blind fantasy, not denial of reality. Faith is the conscious decision to trust a vision before it becomes visible, to hold to a purpose when the ground beneath you shakes, to continue when every external sign demands surrender. Without faith, ambition collapses under the weight of doubt, resilience dies under pressure, and vision fades under ridicule. With faith, the impossible bends, the unseen materializes, and the human soul endures storms no calculation could survive. Human behavior is dominated by what people see and touch. Most move only when the path is clear, only when proof is in hand, only when risk is minimized. But the world's greatest builders, thinkers, and leaders always walked by faith before proof. They did not wait for certainty, they created certainty by moving anyway. Faith is the courage to plant seeds in barren ground, trusting the harvest that no one else believes will come. It is the audacity to stand when others flee, to declare destiny when others see disaster, to build a bridge where no river has yet been crossed. Abraham Lincoln's life was an act of faith. He had no birthright of privilege, no lineage of power, no guarantee of success. Yet he carried a faith that democracy could endure, that liberty could expand, that a nation so divided could be united again. Faith carried him through failures in elections, through endless ridicule, through the agony of war. When others despaired, he chose to believe. That faith was not foolishness. It was the strength that made him endure long enough for destiny to reveal itself. Thomas Edison's laboratories were temples of faith. Every failed experiment was an altar where faith was tested. Thousands of times, the evidence screamed failure, yet Edison's faith told him that a solution existed. He could not see it, could not hold it, could not prove it, but he believed in its possibility. That faith allowed him to continue, and his persistence turned unseen possibility into visible light. Henry Ford's vision of a car for the common man was faith incarnate. The world laughed, economists dismissed him, rivals scorned him. But Ford's faith was stronger than their doubt. He believed in a future that did not exist yet, and he built it until the world itself had to adjust to his belief. His factories were faith turned into steel. His assembly line was faith turned into motion. Andrew Carnegie carried faith through poverty. As a child laborer, he had no evidence that his life could rise beyond sweat and survival. But faith told him that opportunity existed, that knowledge could lift him, that persistence could transform him. Later, his faith shifted into philanthropy, a faith that libraries could elevate millions, that education could break the cycle of poverty. His faith was not just for himself but for humanity. And Walt Disney, his entire life was faith made visible. He believed in characters that did not exist, in worlds no one else could see, in magic no one else dared to trust. He faced betrayals, bankruptcies, humiliations, yet his faith never wavered. He built castles out of sketches, dreams out of ruins, wonder out of ridicule. Faith was the engine of his imagination, the reason his creations still breathe decades after his death. Faith is not the absence of reason. It is reason stretched beyond current evidence. It does not ignore reality, it refuses to be confined by it. Faith says, reality is what is now. But what will be can be greater. The mind without faith sees walls. The mind with faith sees doors. The man without faith stops at obstacles. The man with faith sees obstacles as temporary, as tests, as illusions to be shattered. Psychology shows us that faith changes behavior because it changes perception. Belief directs attention, and attention directs action. When you believe something is possible, your mind scans reality for evidence, for opportunities, for openings. Faith creates a bias toward action, and action multiplies chances of success. It is not magic, it is alignment. Faith gives your brain a direction, and your body follows. Edison's faith in discovery directed him to persist where others quit. Lincoln's faith in unity directed him to endure where others surrendered. Disney's faith in imagination directed him to build where others laughed. But faith is not without suffering. Faith demands waiting when results are absent. Faith demands risk when security is available. Faith demands ridicule when the crowd mocks. Faith demands endurance when failure multiplies. Faith is tested in fire, and only those who hold through the fire see it fulfilled. Edison's faith was tested thousands of times. Lincoln's faith was tested in war. Ford's faith was tested in bankruptcy. Carnegie's faith was tested in poverty. Disney's faith was tested in betrayal. Faith is meaningless if it is never tested. It becomes real only when it survives what should have killed it. Faith is also contagious. People follow leaders not because they have all the answers, but because they carry faith. Faith is magnetic. It is the unseen conviction that makes others believe simply because you do. Soldiers followed Lincoln because his faith gave them hope. Investors followed Edison because his faith was louder than his failures. Workers followed Ford because his faith painted a future worth laboring for. Generations followed Disney because his faith in wonder ignited their own. Faith spreads because it awakens the sleeping courage in others. Yet faith must be anchored. Blind faith without discipline is delusion. Faith without action is fantasy. Faith without integrity is fraud. True faith is not passive. It is not waiting for miracles to fall from the sky. True faith is active, disciplined, relentless. It works as though the outcome depends on effort while believing the outcome is inevitable. Edison did not sit still and hope for invention. He acted in faith until invention appeared. Lincoln did not wait for unity to arrive. He acted in faith until unity was preserved. Disney did not daydream castles. He built them in faith until stone rose from dirt. Faith is not laziness. It is the most dangerous form of labor because it persists without evidence. Faith is the 18th law of human behavior because it is the force beyond sight. Without it, ambition burns out, resilience collapses, courage fades. With it, humanity walks where it could never have walked, builds what it could never have built, becomes what it could never have become. So ask yourself, do you live by sight alone, or do you live by faith? Do you move only when you see the path, or do you trust your vision enough to step into fog? Do you surrender when evidence fades, or do you endure until evidence bends to your belief? Because in the end, the world is not moved by those who waited for proof. It is moved by those who acted in faith until proof arrived. Faith is not naive. Faith is power. Faith is destiny before it is visible. Chapter 19. Legacy as the Echo of Eternity. Legacy is the echo of a life after its voice has fallen silent. It is the residue of your actions, the imprint of your choices, the trail of your existence carved into the fabric of time. Legacy is not what you accumulate, not what you flaunt, not what you hold in your hands for a season. Legacy is what remains when your hands are dust. It is what outlives you, what speaks when your lips can no longer move, what breathes when your lungs no longer draw air. Legacy is the final measure of human behavior, the ultimate test of whether your life was noise or music, distraction or destiny, dust or monument. Most people live as though their lives end with them. They chase comfort, status, possessions, indulgences, never realizing that the grave swallows them all. But the few who understand legacy live differently. They see beyond their years. They live as architects of eternity, knowing that their actions ripple through generations. They measure not by applause but by permanence, not by riches but by resonance. Legacy is the moment you realize your life is not only about you, it is about those who will walk the ground after you, those who will inherit what you built, those who will carry what you left. Abraham Lincoln's legacy was liberty and unity. He did not live to see the fullness of his vision. He was assassinated before the healing could truly begin. But his legacy endured. The Emancipation Proclamation, the preservation of the Union, the example of leadership under fire, these outlived him. His words still echo because his integrity, his courage, his sacrifice crystallized into legacy. Lincoln's body fell, but his legacy rose. Thomas Edison's legacy was illumination. He did not merely create inventions, he altered the rhythm of human life. Before Edison, night was limitation. After Edison, night was opportunity. His laboratories are gone, his hands are dust, but the lights in cities across the world are his legacy. Every bulb is an echo of his persistence. Every invention that emerged from his laboratories multiplied his legacy into industries that still power modern life. Henry Ford's legacy was mobility. He democratized motion, giving freedom to ordinary families, reshaping geography, compressing time itself. Roads stretched, cities expanded, industries multiplied, all because one man refused to confine the automobile to the elite. Ford's body died, but his legacy still moves in the hum of engines, in the wheels that carry billions across the earth every day. Andrew Carnegie's legacy was knowledge. He could have died with wealth hoarded, with riches buried in silence. Instead, he turned steel into schools, fortune into libraries, ambition into education. Millions who never knew his name still touched his legacy in books they read, in institutions they entered, in ideas that shaped their lives. That is the power of legacy. It outlives the hand that gave it. Walt Disney's legacy was wonder. He died before his dream was fully realized, but his imagination had already been planted in stone. The parks, the films, the characters, the laughter of children, these became his legacy. Disney is gone, but his worlds remain alive, proving that imagination, when embodied with courage and discipline, outlasts the dreamer himself. Legacy is not built in comfort. It is forged in sacrifice, discipline, resilience, and faith. Legacy demands the long view, the willingness to endure ridicule now for reverence later, the humility to work not for applause today but for impact tomorrow. Legacy is not quick. It is not instant. It is the patient layering of action upon action, choice upon choice, day upon day until your life becomes a monument invisible to you but undeniable to those after you. Psychology teaches us that human beings are motivated by two fears, the fear of death and the fear of insignificance. Death is inevitable. Insignificance is not. Legacy is the antidote to insignificance. It is the answer to the question, did my life matter? Did my actions change anything? Did my existence leave a mark, or did it pass like smoke? The insecure try to deny death by clinging to youth, to possessions, to illusions of permanence. The wise do not deny death, they defeat insignificance by building legacy. Legacy is also social intelligence at its highest form. To influence others temporarily is power. To influence others permanently is legacy. Legacy is not manipulation, it is transformation. It is not extracting from people but depositing into them. Lincoln's speeches still influence because they became legacy. Edison's inventions still influence because they became legacy. Carnegie's libraries still influence because they became legacy. Disney's creations still influence because they became legacy. Influence without legacy dies with the speaker. Influence with legacy outlives centuries. But legacy is also a choice. It does not happen automatically. It is not the natural byproduct of living long. Many live long and leave nothing. Many accumulate wealth and leave only greed. Many hold power and leave only fear. Legacy is intentional. It is built with purpose, with sacrifice, with alignment. It asks, what do I want to remain when I am gone? What will echo when I am silent? What will endure when I am dust? Legacy is also a mirror. It forces you to ask not just what you want to gain, but what you want to give. Not just what you want to experience, but what you want to leave. The selfish leave nothing but ashes. The generous leave structures of hope. The arrogant leave only memories of fear. The humble leave rivers of impact. Legacy is not about size, it is about substance. A teacher who pours into students leaves legacy as surely as a president who shapes nations. A parent who raises children with love leaves legacy as surely as an inventor who builds industries. Legacy is not measured in scale but in endurance. And here lies the paradox. You may never see your legacy in full. Lincoln did not live to see America healed. Carnegie did not live to see all the knowledge his libraries spread. Disney did not live to see all the wonders his parks created. Legacy is built in faith, in trust that what you build will outlive you, even if you do not witness its final form. Legacy requires humility, the willingness to labor for a future you will not fully enjoy. Legacy is the 19th law of human behavior because it is the echo of eternity. Without it, your life ends with your last breath. With it, your life speaks long after death. Without it, your story is forgotten. With it, your story becomes a compass for generations. Legacy is the answer to insignificance, the cure for meaninglessness, the ultimate proof that greatness is not temporary but eternal. So ask yourself, what will be your legacy? Will your name fade with your body, or will your actions speak when you are silent? Will your wealth vanish in dust, or will it transform into opportunity for others? Will your vision die in sketches, or will it rise in stone and steel? Will your existence pass unnoticed, or will it ripple through centuries? Because in the end, the true measure of your life is not what you gained but what you gave, not what you held but what you left, not what you enjoyed but what you built. Legacy is not a gift you receive, it is a gift you give. And those who live with legacy in mind never truly die. Chapter 20. The Summit of Mastery, Becoming Eternal. There comes a moment in every life when you must face the summit. The mountain has loomed over you since the beginning, its shadow stretching across every decision, every fear, every triumph, every loss. You have climbed through valleys of failure, across deserts of doubt, through storms of rejection. You have carried belief like a torch, vision like a compass, discipline like armor, resilience like a shield. You have endured sacrifice, wielded courage, sharpened focus, embodied integrity, fueled ambition, sustained faith. And now you stand at the edge of the summit, the final question rising before you: will your life matter? Will you leave a legacy that echoes into eternity? Will you master not just behavior, not just influence, not just success, but existence itself? The summit of mastery is not a single achievement, not a crown, not a fortune, not applause. It is the state of becoming eternal. It is the moment when your life transcends its own boundaries and begins to ripple beyond your death. It is the realization that greatness is not something you own, but something you serve. It is not the possession of glory, but the gift of transformation. Mastery is not domination of others, it is domination of self. It is the highest alignment between thought, word, action, and destiny. Look at history's giants. Abraham Lincoln did not climb to the summit for wealth. He did not ascend for comfort. He rose because he carried liberty on his shoulders, because he believed unity mattered more than ease, because he was willing to sacrifice everything so that others might live free. That is the summit of mastery, to live for something greater than yourself. His body fell to bullets, but his legacy rose to eternity. Thomas Edison did not reach mastery through convenience. He endured ridicule, failure, exhaustion. He turned laboratories into cathedrals of persistence. He summoned light from the dark, sound from silence, motion from stillness. His mastery was not invention itself, but the spirit of relentless learning, the refusal to let failure define him. His summit was not the light bulb alone, but the lesson. Persistence fueled by faith can bend reality itself. Henry Ford did not reach the summit because he was first to build a car. He was not. His mastery was in democratizing motion, in refusing to confine innovation to the elite. He transformed geography, society, and time. His assembly line was not merely mechanical genius, it was a monument to ambition and focus. His summit was not cars on roads, it was freedom in motion. Andrew Carnegie's mastery was not wealth, though he commanded more than kings. His mastery was transformation, steel into skylines, fortune into libraries, power into opportunity. His summit was not measured in factories but in minds, millions of unknown students who touched his legacy in books and ideas. His body died, but his echo continues wherever knowledge is pursued. And Walt Disney, his summit was not one cartoon, one film, one park. It was the audacity to believe that imagination could be engineered, that joy could be constructed, that wonder could be immortalized. He endured betrayal, bankruptcy, ridicule, yet he refused to kill the child within him. His summit was wonder itself, the ability to remind the world that dreams are not illusions but blueprints. And because of his mastery, his legacy still breathes in every child's laughter, in every castle that rises against the sky. The summit of mastery is not reached by chance. It is not given. It is carved, step by step, law by law, choice by choice. It demands everything. It demands belief when the world doubts, vision when the horizon is dark, discipline when temptation whispers, action when fear screams, gratitude when loss burns, adaptability when chaos strikes, resilience when defeat overwhelms, learning when failure repeats, focus when distraction surrounds, sacrifice when comfort tempts, courage when risk threatens, integrity when compromise seduces, ambition when mediocrity shouts, faith when evidence vanishes, legacy when death approaches. These are the laws. These are the steps. This is the climb. And now the question rests on you. You who have listened, you who have absorbed, you who have walked through these words as though they were fire. What will you do? Will you remain in the valley of comfort, where life is safe but meaningless? Or will you climb, scarred and weary, toward the summit where mastery awaits? Will you die ordinary, or will you live extraordinary? Will you vanish into silence, or will your life echo into eternity? The summit of mastery is not a place. It is a state. It is reached the moment you align your inner world with your outer world, when your thoughts, words, and actions become one unbroken stream of conviction. It is reached the moment you live not for applause but for impact, not for ease but for meaning, not for survival but for significance. The summit is reached when your existence is no longer just a life, but a legacy. So ask yourself, and ask with fire, with honesty, with urgency, what is the purpose of my life? What am I willing to suffer for? What will I sacrifice? What will I leave behind? What will be my echo when I am gone? Because mastery does not ask whether you were comfortable. It asks whether you were courageous. It does not ask whether you were wealthy. It asks whether you were worthy. It does not ask whether you lived long. It asks whether you lived loud enough that your name could outlast your breath. The summit is waiting. The climb is brutal. The storms will come. The nights will break you. The falls will scar you. But if you rise, if you persist, if you endure with fire in your soul, you will stand where few have stood. And when you do, you will know what Lincoln knew, what Edison knew, what Ford, Carnegie, and Disney knew, that mastery is not reserved for the chosen, but for the willing. That greatness is not fate, but faith. That immortality is not magic, but legacy. And then, when your body fails, when your voice silences, when your eyes close, you will not die with regret. Because your life will not have ended. It will have begun again, in the echoes you leave, in the legacy you carved, in the eternity you touched. This is the summit. This is mastery. This is the call to every soul that refuses mediocrity. Rise. Become eternal.